Hello, hello. Check, check. Sound check. How are my justice warriors? We're going to jump right back into the Billionaires Playboy Club. We got to page 49 last night, and that took a long time, like 6 hours. It's crazy. So let's just try to speed read chapter 8, top of page 49. I say is simply my opinion for the sake of hoping to start a conversation, open up a discussion, learn something. All my videos are made for YouTube. It's an infotainment platform. This here video that we're doing right now is specifically for educational purposes. Hit your like button. Make sure you're still subscribed and all that other jazz. So here we go. Chapter 8. The phone nearly rang out, and I was about to hang up the receiver when he finally picked up. Why don't I read the end of the last paragraph? That last, departing to our own separate quarters for the night, I called TJ for condolence. It was so important for me to feel like I had someone out there who saw me as more than a pretty girl with vulnerabilities. I needed to maintain some sort of a connection to my youthful side, but it would be to no avail, as I was getting used to being badly disappointed by all the men in my life. Anna Bees, I've been waiting all day for you. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I've been waiting all day for me too. So I'll just keep reading. How are you? Thank you for being here. Yeah, it's 8 o'clock. I was going to try to come on at noon. I slept in until 2. I was up all night because of that freaking coffee I drank. I feel like a stalker. No, my dear, you're the best. You are the bomb diggity. Thank you, honey. So here we are, chapter 8. I just feel like it's so important to read through this. I could cry because it's so freaking hard to document it onto the tube for all of us to check it out. Doesn't need to be that challenging, but it is. I figured you were tired from yesterday. I didn't fall asleep until 7 this morning. I mean, I was laying in bed for, from midnight or whatever time. So I was resting, but I didn't fall asleep until 7, and thus I slept until 2, and I was planning on coming on at noon, but I did get to go for a good walk. So thanks for your patience, my dear. How has your day been? So here we are at chapter 8. I'll let you answer and I'll keep reading. The phone nearly rang out, and I was about to hang up the receiver when he finally picked up. On the other end of the phone, I could hardly hear TJ above the background noises. When I asked where he was, he told me, "At our place, baby," meaning the apartment Jeffrey had rented for me to be staying in alone. He already sounded off his chops, elongating his words and slurring his speech. There was music pumping and people shouting behind him, and everyone sounded like they were having a great time. I was so sick of his friends coming over, using my house as a place to party, and then trashing it, and then trashing it so bad, I would even have to sometimes throw my furniture out. Gross, get vomited on and crap. That's good. I'm doing good. Oh, I'm so glad. Back to his parents' house. Okay, wait, what did I miss? Trashing it so bad I would have to sometimes throw the furniture out. I blew up at him over the phone and threatened to kick him out back to his parents' house. So much for my relaxing evening, I thought to myself, venturing on to tell him, "You leech off me using the money I leave behind for you for drugs and throw these gigantic parties while I'm away." Also mentioning the distance messes. Also mentioning the disastrous messes I would come home to. My eyes are a little bleary. I didn't clean my glasses. I probably should have. I'll try to do that now. I am so close, or in a second, I am so close to ending it with you. I would openly threaten, but he knew better than I did that I just couldn't bring myself to do so, needing some attachment to my youth through all of this. Don't worry, baby, he would say, attempting to soothe me with his false words, going on to tell me how much he was missing me and how he was always thinking about me when I was away, which was like all the time. I would soon be buttered up and soft for serve. That's funny. Soft for serve. This was my penalty for choosing a guy that accepted my lifestyle with my other man, as I had so eloquently put it to him once, as not only acceptable, but deemed it cool. The conversation ended with an easy goodbye and no I love yous or anything sweet. We weren't those kinds of partners yet. So much time spent away from each other and the lifestyles we both led. I couldn't expect much more from him than what we already had. So, yeah, let me try to clean my glasses. They're a little smudgy and it's making it harder for me to read. Yeah, it was a beautiful day here. It was like 50 or 60 degrees, and I was expecting it to be really cold. I think it's going to be really cold for the next few days, but we'll see. So I went for a nice long walk. Um, Jeffrey and I left 2 days later, heading off to Carmel in California for a business trip of his, leaving Jiz and Emmy to catch a commercial flight back to New York City, where we would meet up with them later. When we arrived at the hotel, we were given badges for the meeting tomorrow and settled into our rooms. We got adjoining rooms, keeping the doors open at all times, but sleeping in different beds. He liked sleeping alone. Even after a late night session, I would always go back to my own room. I think that's why he liked me so much. I never put pressure on him to become intimately more than what we were already, never giving him the impression I wanted more than what we had. It seemed to keep him happy just the way we were together. I hung out with Little E that night, going to a restaurant for dinner and afterwards watching a movie back at the hotel. Oh, Mark. Hello, Mr. Mark. How are you? Poor girl. She didn't know how she should be treated. A quick hi and bye. Click the like, everyone. Happy Saturday. Well, thank you so much for coming in again and saying hi, Mark. It was lovely to see you last night. After you left, I think I asked you if you had turned the tapestry that you won into a cape, or if you had passed it on to somebody, because I remember you saying you didn't know what to do with it. But it's fine, whatever it is that you've done with it or not done with it. I don't want to put any pressure on you to answer. I always like to give people the leeway to not share any information at all in the chat, because you know how it is. You know how it is. Anyway, lovely to see you again. And man, these damn braces. Let me see if I should try to put a little bit of wax on. And Fred is here. Oh my goodness, look at us. We are having a little party. Happy Saturday. I'm going to just try a little bit of wax. Because, yeah, yesterday I kind of waited too long and I should have started earlier. I thought about putting it on before I came on, but then I was like, nah, I'll see if I can talk a little bit without it. I don't know if it really makes it harder to understand me or not. I'm not going to put that much wax in. Just a little bit in the front, the top, Sorry to be all gross. Oh, and so sorry. Yesterday, I did a little bit of review on my video. I didn't realize how well you could hear the toilet flushing since it's right across the hall. I'll try to mute it today when I have to take a break to go to the bathroom. That's hilarious. Rude, right? Just so rude. So many weird things like that. And some people I'm sure think, oh, that's great because we're all human, and other people are like, oh my God, I can hear the toilet flushing in the background. Gross. Never watching this weirdo again. Yeah. Yes. Mary Thomas. Well, hello, everyone. Sorry I had to deal health issues. I've truly missed you all. Lovely to see you, my dear. Lovely to see you. All of you. So, all right. Let's see if that's enough wax, I think, to help out, and not too much so that you guys can't understand what it is that I'm saying. Um, it seemed to keep him happy just the way we were together. I hung out with Jeffrey that night, going to a restaurant for dinner, and afterwards watching a movie back at the hotel. The next morning, we went for an early morning breakfast. This is something that Virginia Giuffre wrote a long time ago. That's sort of like the rough draft for the book that was published posthumously a couple weeks ago, the Nobody's Girl book. Yes, Mary, we all hope you're doing better. Um, Next morning, we went for an early breakfast before the conference, and Jeffrey gave me some money to go shopping instead of attending the all day meeting with him. I was more than obliged to accept his request and wished him a good day before planning to meet back in the room around 6 p.m. He gave me $500. He said it was just enough to go have fun for the day, and a girl of my means could find plenty to do with that kind of money. I walked around the many boutiques that lined the streets of the picturesque, cozy town and picked up some bits of clothing here and there, and even met a girl who was passing through on a road trip. She was somewhere in her late teens with golden sunshine tresses, olive skin, and blue eyes. Her name escapes me, and it was so unexpected. I think it was Tina or something like that. But she was your typical California carefree chick, offering me a few tokes of her J as we ducked down a side street together. I was so happy I had met this girl, as she was fun spirited and charismatic, a relief from the social expectations I had come to know lately. But always being on call, as I had been trained to be, I ended up inviting her back to meet Jeffrey, gross, at our hotel later on as a surprise for him. Maybe she was just a bit too carefree for little E's taste, but anyhow, she was pretty enough to let him be the judge of that matter. Over the next hour of hanging out together, I found out that she was on a road trip with her best friend, who was still sleeping off the hard night of partying from the night before. Rutro. Um, I'm not Sarah that's going on, but I hope you rip it off. Yikes. I'm so confused. Must be a voice to text, Mary. Dexter is snoring on the love seat next to me. Oh, very sweet. Okay, not sure, not Sierra. I wonder what business meeting little E was having. Yeah, I don't know if it was like some high tech thing, because aren't they like in Northern California or Southern California? I think they said they're near Carmel. Um, so I'm not sure that's going on, but I hope you're Rip it off. Yikes. Oh, the braces. Is that what you're talking about? I have wax on my braces because they hurt the inside of my mouth. They suck. I've had them for like 3 months. Okay. This is scaring me with these two women that she's, let's see where this goes. So creepy. Um, she was originally from the southern states, as she had a bit of a draw still left in her accent, and she had recently left her boyfriend because he was leaving for a college too far away, not believing in long distance relationships. Then it was my turn to dish out my contribution to the conversation of getting to know each other better. I always got anxiety before I would tell a girl what I did for work and romance, such as morally, I was ashamed of who I was, especially with a girl having led somewhat of a normal life. Next, as always, I expected to be probed with so many more questions and having to make little E sound ideal and hot for the taste of a young girl, and knew I would be point blank lying. So I told her some of the truth, which was that he was really rich and paid good money for a massage and useful to have around as a contact. I told her he'd give her $200 for a 2-hour massage with me leading the way, and warning her he was known to be frisky during the session. Unexpectedly, she said that she could use the money, and then came the part that I hated the most, but I had to do so they wouldn't be as shocked as I was the first time I had met him. He does like us to be nude, though, and sometimes asks for more than just the massage itself. Sometimes, right? Um, yes, Grand's techie teaching. Oh, and did you know that Erica's mom was with Homeland Security? I did, Annabise, and I just found tonight more evidence of her having won the Arizona 2007 Miss Teen beauty pageant. And I was trying to post it on my community tab before I came on, and it wasn't working. So I'll be posting that later. So it's the third thing that I've found about Erica being in a beauty pageant in 2007, which she was born in 88. So she would have been 19 years old. Maybe 2006, because they do the beauty pageants the year before for that year. So still a teenager, maybe not underage, but still a teenager. Boob tube. I was just going to listen. Much love, everyone. Oh my gosh. I know. I couldn't believe it. I was like so happy to find a third thing. And it was kind of unexpected, but we'll talk more about that. Yeah. And her dad worked on the Iron Dome, which is a defense system for the country that begins with the letter I. He worked on that back, I want to say that was in the 80s. That would have been around the time she was born. Anyway, let's stay focused. But yes, so lovely to see all of you. Thank you for being here. Read. Oh, it just gets so gross. Sometimes asks for more than just the massage itself. All I could do was wait for a response after a shocking sentence like that. And depending on the girl, most were sadly taken back by the money. Her carefree attitude seemed too disillusioned for a moment when she gave it some thought and asked me, "He's not like fat and ugly, is he?" No, not at all, I replied. He's got more of a Richard Gere appeal to him, trying to make him sound a little more measurable than just a rich old man that likes to be with younger girls than half his age, younger than half his age. Well, then, what time shall we meet tonight? She asked next. Great, I thought. Little E would be most pleased with my find. Knock on my room quietly. You're going to be a surprise. Be there at around 7:30 tonight, and I will introduce you to little E. She threw the butt of the second J we shared in the bushes, and we strolled into a homemade fudge boutique to get some relief for the munchies we now had. When I got back to the hotel at around 5:45 p.m., as requested I'd be, nobody was back yet, so I took the time to set up the oils and bath in my room for his massage tonight. I thought I would plan it so the girl would be cleaning off as little E liked before he had a sexual contact with a new girl, and he could walk in and be surprised to find a strange, beautiful girl in my room who wanted to massage him. Little E walked through the door not long after I had was done prepping for the night ahead, looking like he had a rough day at the office, which was very rare for him. He sat down on the bed, and I asked him how his day was. He didn't want to talk much about it, saying it was boring and long, rather asking what I got up to for the day. Being coy about having a J and his unexpected surprise to come, I told him it was a great day of shopping and sightseeing, and even brought him back some local made fudge from a shop that had fulfilled my chocolate cravings only hours ago. Telling him of the places I ventured into, I mentioned to him we'd have to hit the Fisherman's Wharf tomorrow. I saw some locals walking around with bread baskets filled with creamy clam chowder, and it smelled absolutely scrumptious. He said if the weather were nice, we'd check it out tomorrow before we left for LA, so that they're in the Bay Area, Fisherman's Wharf. He wanted to take off his jeans and collared shirt and put on his normal attire of sweatpants and a sweatshirt, ushering him out the door for dinner when he was more relaxed. I was lucky when he said he was starving and quickly got dressed. We just found a quiet spot to eat that was next to the wharf and got back to the hotel just in time for our surprise guest. He wanted to go have a shower and settle down for a massage, so I told him I'd join him in a minute. I just had to make a phone call real quick, which he thought was odd, and asked if everything was all right. I reinstated. She's so funny with the language. I think she means she restated. I reinstated that I'd just be a minute, trying not to let on about anything. The knock came quietly on my room's door just on time, as we had planned, and I told her my idea to surprise him. I have a feeling something bad's going to happen. All this lead up. I led her into the bathroom where she orchestrated my plan perfectly. Little E finished his shower without me, and when he called out for me, I told him that I needed him to have a look at something in my room real quick. Not giving in to what it was that he would be looking at, he came into the room where I opened my bathroom door to reveal a beautiful nude girl bathing in a thick amount of soap bubbles in my tub, looking at him with an alluring intrigue. His grin went from ear to ear as she stood up and introduced herself, letting the bubbles run down her glistening body at an ever slow pace. It was a proud moment for little E. I had done well in his eyes, and she was not like the other girls I had brought to him before. Degraded from a lifetime of abuse off the streets, this girl was exactly his pro quo, looking sweet and innocent as the girl next door. My efforts were to show him I knew that my only responsibility was to keep him happy at all costs. I led her through the massage on little E, and of course, afterwards, gratifying his perversion with his lustful requests to be fondled and watch us become more than just friends. I didn't feel too bad at the time with his coercion, providing many financial rewards, making his scheme enticing to a young, impressionable teen, not realizing the terrible memories left to come from all of this. Afterwards, he paid her the usual $200 he gave to everyone for their time and took down her name and phone number, writing in his infamous little black book of the contacts he met in every city, but only the ones he really liked made it down in his records. We went out to the we went out the next afternoon as I had suggested last night, and we ate our clam chowder bread baskets overlooking the wharf's bay, watching the seals playfully barking at each other on the rocks nearby. Shortly after, we were driven to the private airstrip and took off for Los Angeles. On the plane was an unexpected visitor, Matt Groening. What? Matt Groening, the producer of The Simpsons TV show, was catching a ride with us. I was so excited as I loved watching his show and acted like a starstruck fan, asking him everything from his initial idea for the creating the show to where he got his characters from. He told me it was all based on his own family makeup, but without the crazy father and son scenes of Homer's hand around Bart's throat. Let me see what you guys are saying. Um, hello, hello. We never threw roaches, not real roaches, away. Anna Bees. I know, that's what I was thinking. Who does that? I guess rich people. You save them for a rainy day, right? That is crazy. Never heard of anybody doing that. I was enjoying our conversation when Little E insisted that I give Matt a foot massage. And Matt, as much as I love The Simpsons and we went to the same college, he's a very unattractive man. Very unattractive, in my opinion, right? um, I was enjoying our conversation when Little E insisted that I give Matt a foot massage throughout the duration of the short flight. I never turned down a client, but when I saw the shape of his feet, I nearly threw up at the thought of having to touch them. OMG. Yeah, trigger warning. He had yellow, crusty toenails that even someone with a chainsaw would have had trouble cutting through. And then there was the fluffy balls of leftover pieces of sock wedged between the crevices of his sweaty toes. How disgusting. Now that was the real icing on the cake for me. No way could I attempt this one, I thought. Then I had an idea. I went to the back of the plane and rinsed a washcloth in warm, soapy water and returned for his dreaded foot massage, but not before attempting to clean them first. Kind of like a Jesus moment, right? Never seen him. Yeah, you could Google an image of him. He's very much ugly. He's a great comedian and great talent with the cartoon, but extremely ugly. I'll just be blunt. Um, in return for my services, Matt was kind enough to draw me two quick sketches on blank paper from his briefcase of my two favorite characters, Homer and Bart. I asked if he could make them out to my little brother and dad, the true fans of the family, not missing an episode during dinner over the past 10 years or so. Next, and so 10 years or so, it wasn't a show until, wasn't it after 1990? What year did Simpsons start? Let's see. When did the Simpsons half-hour show start? 1989, December 17th. The Christmas special. And before that, it was the animated shorts on the Tracy Ullman Show, which began on April 19th, 1987, because he had just dropped out of Evergreen right before that in 1987. And then I started at Evergreen in about August of 1987. Okay, where was I? About this 10-year thing. The past 10 years or so. Next to the A4 size drawing, he was able to fit in the quote, "To my greatest fan," from Matt Groening, and their names next to it. I knew they'd absolutely love it, and it was such a nice gesture. His feet were no longer an issue as I laughed it off and even made a joke to the condition about getting a pedicure before hitting LA's beaches. The flight was only short, and we arrived in busy LA within the hour, saying goodbye to Matt, who was a pleasure to meet. Little E had a meeting at a production studio for one of the girls he was keeping lured in his grasps. So we were off yet again for more business. We were staying with one of his old girlfriends, Little E's code for she got too old for my taste, but was still nice enough to keep around. She was a tall blonde with blue eyes, a stereotypical Barbie doll. In her younger years, she had been a successful model and now lived on the beaches of Santa Monica with a sweeping view of the ocean's landscape at her backyard. The next morning, Little E and I went out for breakfast. He said Sarah Keller would be joining us Sarah Keller. That was the name that I was looking for. When I thought it was Sarah Ransom, I was thinking it was Sarah Keller. Would be joining us with another one of Little E's girls I hadn't met yet. Her name was Nadia Bajorlin, and she was a Yugoslavian model turned aspiring actress. With the help of Little E, as he so proudly remarked at the table before they arrived shortly thereafter. She was a stunning brunette with olive skin tones and shocking blue eyes. By far one of the most beautiful girls I had ever met before. She and Sarah approached the table, shopping bags in hands, already in the early hours of the day. They both pulled out a chair and showed us a new pair of Jimmy Choos that they had bought on their way here this morning, and excitedly asked for Little E's opinion. He loved the doting attention and anyone who could make him feel important. We all went back to Sarah's apartment that Little E rented for her on Malibu Beach. This was the first time Little E came to visit, and when we got there, you could see why. It was a tiny one-bedroom shack, too small for his likes of accommodation, but she loved it, and it was plain to see why. The waves lapped up underneath her porch twice a day. What else could anyone want? Before even walking through her door, you could hear the commotion of excitedly screaming females' voices coming from inside. There were about 5 other girls in Sarah's living room, and she had invited them so Little E could have a few different girls to choose from. So gross. I remember that my sister had kids around the same age as mine, and she was upset that I would let my kids watch The Simpsons. That's funny because that was before the days of Family Guy or what are some of the other terrible ones? South Park, right? The Simpsons is nothing compared to those. Oh, this is so gross. He could have a few different girls to choose from. Little E looked at Sarah and smiled. Aren't you sweet? As all the girls rushed to introduce themselves, hoping for the opportunities Sarah had offered them to come in the first place. We all had some coffee and biscuits while the conversation kept getting louder and louder. Every girl trying to talk over the next one. Little E could handle only so much of that before getting too annoyed, right, and having to ejaculate. Sorry. Instead of choosing one of the other new girls, Little E wanted Sarah to show Nadia and I her bedroom. He was anticipating the introduction of his two favorite girls together. What mischief he had hoped we would get up to was apparent when he asked where Sarah kept her play toys and not the Fisher Price ones. Sarah brought out quite a collection of her personal toys and was giggling on her way out as she shut the door. Suddenly, the room behind us went quiet, probably hoping to catch a moan or groans to laugh at. And I felt so degraded having everyone knowing exactly what was going on. Knowing my duties well, I was baffled this time as there was no ritualistic massage wanted. Again, funny when she says ritualistic instead of just ritual, right? Ritualistic massage wanted. He immediately instructed me to start kissing, and he immediately instructed us to start kissing and fondling each other with the provided toys straight away. Seeing his excitement grow, watching us try and outdo the other one with pleasure, he couldn't keep restraint any longer and started to have, trigger warning, intercourse with both of us, taking his erect penis, sorry, this is just a little too much, out of the other. So only out of the other to only swap to the other girl back and forth. This continued for a good 15 minutes or so while we continued to engage in lesbian acts on each other while the other girl was being subdued by Little E's thrusts of penetration. Nadia was just as dutiful as I was in fulfilling his demented requests, willing to lend her body to Little E and those he sent her to for the sake of keeping her acting career and putting on a good act at that. She was never competition, though. Once I found out where she actually came from, I took pity on her for the similar life of servitude we were both accustomed to, and not that we ever became good friends exactly, but we had reason to relate to each other. Later on, Little E, Nadia, and I went to a production studio in Los Angeles where we had to meet Nadia's agent as well as the producers of Days of Our Lives. Oh, that's funny. Oh, I told you I was going to show you the Rose herbal supplement. The name of the company is Anima Mundi, Mundi, and it's literally just like rose petals dried and ground up, and it smells so good. Not that you can smell it, of course, but it's also really pretty. It's kind of like a pinkish purple, and it's edible, so you like put it in tea and stuff. So that's what I have my little smoothie again. Um, and I have my water too, and no coffee tonight. We'll see how it goes. Where was I? Somewhere where it said Days of Our Lives. Where was it? Right here, the bottom of 54. The meeting lasted 5 minutes with everyone in consent to the proposal. We flew all the way out there to talk about money, only to be leaving that evening back to New York City. On the way to the airport, um, we stopped at a 50s looking diner and got cheeseburgers and vanilla milkshakes. The first and only time I saw Little E eat what I considered to be real food. Several lanes to drive in, and the freeway was still lined bumper to bumper in the heavy rain. Well, yeah, it's Los Angeles. That's normal. The sound of downpour on the rooftop of the taxi and the rhythm of the windshield wipers was making me sleepy. I was looking forward to sleeping through the long flight back. Thank goodness we had a private jet to catch back. The trip would be comfortable and not rush to get there on their time through the daily peak hour traffic. Little E asked me what I thought of Nadia, more of a kiss and tell kind of thing for him. So proud to admit some of his tenacious acts of pedophilia to me that I knew most people would be embarrassed to even think aloud. But I said what he wanted to hear when he asked me what I had thought of her on the way back. I replied, "She is attractive, funny, and seems to know what she is doing with you," laughing at my statement. He then started to tell me the history behind where he got her. 5 years ago, when she was merely a teenager, just turned 13. Her father had recently passed away. This is so sad. We're going to have to sit this one out. Night, everyone. Keep speaking forth and the truth. Yes, boob tube. Thank you, my dear. And I understand whether that's because the material's so disgusting or other reasons. Yeah. Thanks for stopping in and saying hi and bye. Oh, yeah, this is going to get really sad. That already is. Her father recently passed away, leaving Nadia's mother in a tremendous amount of debt and living in a third world country. She didn't have the means necessary to raise her own daughter. When Jiz approached Nadia for the first time at a music school, she seemed like a maternal, caring stepmother, telling Nadia's mother if she let Nadia go with her, she would see to it personally that Nadia received the best education and chances in life to make it. In her customs, it wasn't odd for a girl to be married off to bring the family good fortune. So she kissed her baby girl goodbye and sent her off to commence her life of servitude. I sat there speechless, listening to little E brag about his endeavor to get her over here, shocked that he could stoop as low to use a barely teen. That's a weird sentence. To use a barely teen to oblige his sexual desires. He was laughing and giddy as he replayed the memories of her arrival in his head, painting me a horrific picture. I had no choice but to imitate a smile to face him with. Um, and somebody's scratching at the door. Maybe I'll get up and let them in real quick. And you know what? Why don't I take a quick bathroom break while I'm at it? And I'll hit the mute button. I don't want to mess it up. I think if I do this, does that do it? I don't know if that muted it or not. Does that mute it? Maybe not. Anyway, I'll try to keep it down. All right. That was hilarious. After I said, I'll try to keep the noise down, I made all that noise knocking something over. Luckily, it wasn't too bad. I just knocked over a couple of the lights. Let's see if I can fix them real quick. I probably don't even need to. I've got a lot of light going on. And yeah, once things get knocked over, it's such a pain. My goodness. Ridiculous. Okay. Really bright, huh? Super bright. Let's see if that one will stay put there. And I'll see if I can get this other one back working without making too much commotion. It's always something, right? Got cords everywhere. I hate all the cords, don't you? Is that all right? Is it too bright? I feel like it's too bright, but that's the way it is. No, I can hear you. Oh no. Yes, hopefully sound is all right. I mean, it looks like it's working, and I tried to mute it, but I don't know why that wouldn't mute. All right. See where we're at. All good. When I see Mary Thomas, I think of Marlo Thomas and Mary Tyler Moore. I love them both. Okay. The saddest story. In her customs, it wasn't odd for a young girl to be married off to bring the family good fortune. So she kissed her baby girl goodbye and sent her off to commence her life of servitude. I sat there speechless, listening to little E brag about his endeavor to get her over here, shocked that he could stoop so low to use a barely teen to oblige his sexual desires. I know I read that part already. He was laughing and giddy as he replayed the memories of her arrival in his head, painting me a horrific picture I had no choice but to imitate the smile to face him with. No pretty girl is safe from the allurement of these villains procuring the youth off of every street in the world. I know that day more than ever before, those morals did not exist for people like this. Little E once told me that every girl he has had sexual relations with has benefited in their career, finances, or an achievement in marriage with a successful colleague of his. Mine was the massage career. For so often, still giving me a lesson from a professional, which he kept me quiet over, which kept me quiet for a while longer. I thought I was already knee deep in this world. If I gave up after putting myself through all of this hell, it would have been, it would have all been for nothing. So I treaded lightly, constantly at risk of being replaced by another willing participant and playing the eager student he wanted me to be. Chapter 8. um, oh, you do too, Mary Thomas. You think of Marlo Thomas and Mary Tyler Moore. Those were like two of the best television shows in all of history, right up there with Rhoda, right? And you know, Rhoda's upstairs neighbor is the one who plays Marge and both of the sisters on The Simpsons. I forget that actress's name, but just funny little trivia there. All right. Chapter 9. We met Jiz and Emmy in New York City, and it wasn't a blissful reunion as I hoped for. Wanting a break from all of this, I was just looking forward to getting back to Palm Beach, not leaving for another 4 more days. I got home late in the evening as little E invited me out to the movies after we had relaxed at his house for a while after landing. I put my keys through the door to my apartment and walked into a quiet house. Not thinking anyone was at home, I set my suitcase on the floor and put my cell phone on charge as I always did to be accessible for whenever little E or Jiz could call. I have a feeling I know what's coming next. She's going to walk in on her boyfriend, right? With somebody else in her bed. Um, yeah. Maud. Yeah, Maud was great. I forgot about that show. That was awesome. Um, let's see. Yeah, there were so many good sitcoms back then. The Jeffersons was one of my favorites, right? Spin-off from All in the Family. Yeah, this is going to get really sad. I think I went to get a drink out of the fridge when I heard some noises coming from the back of my apartment where my bedroom was. I started back there and slowly turned my doorknob to reveal TJ on top of another girl. When they noticed they weren't alone anymore, TJ got off of her with promptness. I recognized the girl from seeing her around at parties, and she was the town Loey. Never heard that phrase, town Loey, kind of like the town drunk, I guess. Scattering her trail of guys along with her presumable diseases, and I wasn't shy to verbalize that when she tried to open her mouth and calm the heated situation between TJ and I. She didn't like her cards on the table in front of the guy she was screwing around with and got up in a fit of rage to attack me. Still nude with only my new white sheets to cover her body, I threw her out of my house along with TJ. I've been paying your way for months, only finding out you're sleeping with the biggest slut in Royal Palm Beach. The irony. At least have some dignity and higher your standards. Wow. Denial ain't just a river in Egypt, right? Dang. I mean, I'm on Virginia's side. I'm in her corner, but still pretty wild. I didn't really have a leg to stand on since I had started this relationship giving him the knowledge that I had a sugar daddy to answer to above him. You're gone all the time, and with that old man, what did you expect me to do? He was right. Wanted what I couldn't have, but I needed some time to cool down and accept my situation. I loved having TJ around to come home to, and he used to be my best friend in my school days. I convinced myself of the lies I continued to accept. Days later, I was still not speaking with TJ, mentally adjusting to my circumstances. I thought I'd have the day off to relax since I hadn't been called all day. Until about 5 p.m. when Jiz called and said little E would like a massage in an hour. Grudgingly, I got up from relaxing on the couch, got dressed, and put my makeup on, meeting Juan downstairs a half hour later. Little E was already lying on the massage table when I walked in. Man, this girl puts up with a lot. I started the massage being very quiet from my somber mood when little E picked up on it and said, "You know, it's not good to massage people when you're angry. You could pass on negative energy." I wasn't sure if he was serious or just trying to be nice so I could speak about what was bothering me. Ending up not being able to maintain my emotion any further, I told him what happened with TJ and broke down in tears, a little heartbroken from living in such a lie. He turned around from his massage and sincerely paused for a second, thinking he was going to console me, but instead he laughed at the very prospect of my notion that the monogamous relationships ever existed. Are you serious? He was only doing what every guy in the world does. You can't hold that against him. I replied in a lighthearted gesture, "Whose side are you on, anyways?" His answer stuck with me for many years to come. "I'm on your side, which is why I'm going to save you a lot of grief with this one tip. Never expect a man to be faithful, and you'll never be let down. It's just the way us men are genetically imprinted." The remainder of the message I had the remainder of the massage, I had to pretend like I wasn't further saddened by his response, but in fact, having to act enlightened. Man, just having to act, right? I would never come to him for any other relationship advice ever again. Yeah, definitely not the right one for that. He told me I'd be fine if I just listened to my mentor. He still loved role playing the teacher and me the pupil like the old days before he got rich and used to be a college professor. He never was, he lied. I wonder if she knew that before she passed away, that he was never a college professor. He was a fake high school teacher, only because William Barr's daddy got him the job. I finished the massage and fulfilled my sexual duties before being sent home, wanting to collapse in anguish. TJ was outside my apartment door when I got there, his mom waiting downstairs in her minivan just in case I kicked him out again. He pleaded his guilt and promised that he would never see her again, agreeing with me that she was the town slut and he screwed up big time. I let him back into my apartment and back into my life, for that matter, but more aware of the world I was being led into believing was of normal conduct, accepted the world, um, believing was of normal conduct, accepted by everyone in this sick world. Little E was going back to New York City and told me to have a few days off before his assistant at the office would arrange for an e-ticket on a commercial flight for me to join him later in the week. I had just made loads of money for my previous trip and wanted to relax like any teenager does. So I threw a hotel party that weekend on Singer Island in Riviera Beach, inviting only a small group of friends to begin with. The hotel room quickly filled up with a flood of teens, and the pumping music was blaring. The room had a luxury overlooking, and the room had a balcony overlooking the pool and the beach that became the smokers section. I wasn't a real smoker at that point, preferring to have a puff of a spiffed blunt instead. So um, I made it my Nile. I don't even understand what that means. Oh no, I made it my rule to go outside trying to prevent holes in the carpet, but it didn't last too long when our forbidden walls came tumbling down. Making so much money that I could supply my wild parties with an assortment of rugs like trips, ecstasy, and coke, as well as an abundance of alcohol that TJ had all the contacts for, made my fellow teens admire me. It definitely gave me a head swell thinking here I was so young, but so grown up already, but so grown up already, with all my peers from high school looking up to me. In the wee hours of the morning, we were all still going hard with our eyes dilated into little black diamonds. We were all having in depth conversations about life and where we would all end up when this charade was all said and done. Nobody got to sleep that night as the room slowly dwindled in numbers, as people were finding their way home to recover from the repercussions of rugs uh, wearing down out of their intoxicated system. When I flew out to New York City to meet Little E the next day, I was still in a horrible state, not knowing what was wrong with me, thinking it was just a bad come down. I rushed out to the elevator and down the hall to my room, sweating profusely to make it just in time to the toilet to throw up bile again for the uncountable time since getting off the plane. I was having intense cramps in my stomach, and then I was called down to meet Little E in the massage room. I had to decline for the first time. I told the housekeeper that I was feeling very ill after the flight, maybe some off food for lunch, and needed to lie down for a while. And nobody came up to check on me for hours or even called. Waking up from my much needed nap, I pulled back the expensive white sheets to find myself in a pool of my own sweat and red stuff. I was covered in the red stains that drenched the pants I was wearing. I had no idea what was going on. I could only focus on the dire amount of pain I was in between the heaves of throwing up and crying simultaneously. I was able to reach the phone and called the housemaid on the intercom. I told her I needed to go to the hospital immediately and slammed the phone down, only to fall back on the floor, hurled in a ball. She didn't hesitate in calling Jiz, who ran up to see what was wrong. Jiz then called little E, who was in his office at the time, and told him to hurry up to my level, stressing to him that it was an emergency. Thinking they really cared about me for the first time since I had known them, they came with me to the hospital. That's funny. It says they came with me to the hospital with me. Just a little edit issue. Now I realize I was only a liability in getting them caught, and they needed to get to the doctors before I could say anything incriminating. They were suspecting the worst now, and seeing he never wore a condom with me, and from our previous conversation, they knew I always made TJ wear one. They feared the situation at hand. When he saw the catastrophic state I was in at that point, it was the housemaid who helped me get up and assisted me down to the car where Jojo was waiting for me. He drove us to either Lenox Hill Hospital or the Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I can't remember, as it was so blurry in such a bad condition. As it was so blurry and in such bad condition. Rushed in for immediate testing. I was uncontrollably vomiting and in so much agony. I was given an injection to help me to subside the intense pain. A nurse came in to ask who would pay for this, and although I insisted my parents' insurance still covered me, Jeffrey persisted that he take care of all the medical bills and gave the nurse his information. Well, of course, he doesn't want them involved, right? Night, night. Goodbye, Fred. Let's see. Usually it tells me what time the comments are made. Timestamps there. That was a minute ago. Okay, good. Then maybe I caught you to say goodnight. Nice to see you again. When the pain relief kicked in, everything and everyone dwindled away until I felt like Alice in Wonderland, who just swallowed the shrinking tablet, and everyone standing around me seemed to move so quick, speak so loud, and hover above me. When I awoke from my induced state, I was alone in a different room. Oh, and I just remembered how loud it is when I'm drinking with this thing. I apologize for those noises. I'll try to be better. Let's see. Not knowing at all what went on, but feeling a little better, I called in the nurse, who looked through my charts and checked my vital signs, then told me the doctor would be in shortly to inform me of the conclusion of my illness. He was a tall man with dark hair and a hardened look about him, obviously from his job and constantly seeing the worst horror stories man could think of. He just bluntly told me I had miscarried in early stages of pregnancy. I should be fine to go home as soon as my course of intravenous antibiotics was complete. The news sunk in fast and hit a deep nerve. I waited for the doctor to close the curtain before I let out my emotion and cried for my disastrous lifestyle that was dragging me into a world that I wanted to break out of. This reoccurring cycle of believing I needed men like little E to succeed in my life was draining the last bits of sensitivity left in my heart. I was picked up by little E himself, who took the doctor alone to the side of the busy hallway to have a private conversation about something. Little E wasn't comforting at all. Oh, this is interesting. There's a redacted part, you guys. I'll show you in just a second. Very wild. It's a Harvard professor whose name is redacted. Stephen somebody. I'll show you one second. It's the first thing redacted. It's the only thing redacted so far that I've seen in this. And I've seen most of it. There's only like 15 pages of it that I haven't read. Where was I? Jeffrey wasn't comfortable at all. Instead, he sent me back home to rest for a couple of weeks, and I only fell deeper into a depression, using all forms of self-medication to treat my sorrows. 2 weeks later, as little E was trying to lighten my spirits, he told me I would be going to his island to meet a new client. He is a Harvard professor named Stephen something. So I'm just showing you the redacted part. Isn't that wild? I am kind of stunned. I want to grab my Google and see what Google knows about a Harvard professor named Stephen. One sec. Keep all of these pages from getting mixed up. Google, what say you? Harvard professor named Stephen associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Stephen Coslin. Harvard professor associated with little E had a similar name to Stephen, Stephen M. Coslin with a K. Little E had a long-standing ties to Harvard and made substantial donations to the university. A 2020 report from Harvard detailed his connections, noting the following about Stephen Coslin. Coslin, a psychologist in neuroscience who was then chair of the psychology department and later a social science divisional dean, recommended little E's admission as a visiting fellow in 2005. Wait, so little E was a professor at Harvard? Are you effing kidding me? Recommended Epstein's admission or admission to college. And Coslin was the visiting fellow in 2005. Between 98 and 2002, which would be during this time that we're looking at here, little E had donated $200,000 to support Coslin's research work. The report noted that Coslin did not disclose these donations in the documents supporting little E's visiting fellow application. So he was a visiting fellow. He didn't even have a freaking college degree. What? The report concluded that little E lacked the typical academic qualifications for a visiting fellow, but his application was approved due to support of the department chair. Little E and Coslin maintained contact even after little E's 2006 indictment for soliciting prostitution, with emails discussing funding and dinners with other scholars. Other Harvard affiliates with connections to little E included former university president Lawrence Summers, Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz, Professor Martin Nowak, theoretical physicist Steven Pinker also provided a legal opinion to Dershowitz for little E's defense in 2006, a decision he later stated he regretted. Ew, it has a picture of this Stephen Coslin. So gross. So he's about 76 or 77 right now and still alive. Ew. Disgusting piece of crap, dude. Let's see if you can see him. There. You can see him, I think, right? Sorry, I had to take my daughter to the bathroom. What happened to her? Why did she go to the hospital? So this is when she had her miscarriage. Although it's weird because I think in the book, Nobody's Girl, she doesn't really say that it was a miscarriage. She says that she thinks it was, but that she wasn't sure. Um, let's see. Maybe like an ectopic pregnancy or something. Okay. Let me reread a little bit. I was picked up by Jeffrey himself. Okay. 2 weeks later, as if Jeffrey was trying to lighten my spirits, he told me I would be going to his island to meet a new client. He is a Harvard professor named Stephen Blank. I would be spending 2 days with him, showing him around the island, dining with him, and treating him to a massage whenever he wanted. Without little E even verbalizing the need to have sex with him, he told me to keep him happy like I had my first client. I packed my suitcase with my island apparel and kissed TJ goodbye, who had at least offered me a warm embrace upon the news of my miscarriage, but none other than that, knowing it wasn't his. Stephen was a quirky little man with white hair and a mad scientist look about him. We arrived separately, and I greeted him when one of the housekeepers picked him up from the airport and arrived by boat instead of helicopter, as little E and Jiz often arrive. We made our acquaintances, and he looked as if he was tripping over himself with words, obviously delighted with his company and location for the weekend. I showed him around as little E had asked and took him on an adventurous quad bike ride around the small curvy paths, leading the way and letting loose my hair, doing something that gave me a natural high instead of the prescription one. The sights alone were breathtaking from the mountainous peaks of the untouched parts of the island. We sat at a cliff and just sat there, not saying a word to each other, besides to compliment the sights, Mother Nature, that appealed to us. I didn't feel as if I owed the stranger anything but was expected of me by little E. And I could be polite, I just couldn't be myself. We got back to the main villa to see what time dinner would be served so we could have time to unpack and clean up beforehand. We both met at 6 p.m. for dinner on the outside veranda. He sat at the head of the table and I sat next to him, politely folding my napkin to put in my lap. The first time little E and Jiz had seen me cut meat and eat with a fork and knife, they were so appalled, making fun of my unsophisticated habits. Jiz took the fork and knife in her hands and proceeded to show me how to politely cut my food and eat. Now that my mannerisms had improved, they wouldn't have to be worried about my etiquette when someone important was around anyone. We both drank the red wine supplied on the table, and it seemed to warm me up on the breezy night. By the time dinner was served and another red wine bottle later, he seemed to get funnier. I made fun of his tousled hair, and he poked at me for my skinny legs, calling me a wannabe anorexic. When dessert was brought out, he asked if he could receive one of the delightful massages he had been hearing about from Little E. I gulped more red wine down and sweetly complied with his offer, dreading the moment I'd have to see his naked body, let alone touch it. I asked the housekeeper, Kathy, who had been serving us in the night, to please have someone set up a massage bed in one of the cabanas. I went to my room to down a few Xanax, telling him I wanted to freshen up after dinner, but to meet me in his cabana in 20 minutes or so. I was ready to go, as I had said, 20 minutes later, with the effects of the tablets mixed with the red wine, and I would be free to not feel anything. He was still dressed when I got in the cabana, obviously not accustomed to this, and a lot shyer than what I had been used to. I told him he'd need to undress and lie face down on the table, putting a towel to cover his bare bottom to prevent him feeling embarrassed during the massage. I gave the massage my earnest, as I always had, and quickly got through having intercourse with him. Trigger warning, not wanting to make any foreplay or anything extravagant out of it. I let him think that's as good as it got, and by the smile on his face, I thought he had done enough. I thought I had done enough. The next day, I took him down to the beach for a real massage under a tiki hut on the water's edge. It was one of Little E's favorite places to have a massage, as he droned out to the sound of the waves and my gentle therapeutic strokes. Afterwards, we had lunch back at the main villa and went back down to the beach to swim out to the water trampoline about 100 meters off the dock. He didn't do any bouncing around or anything like that. It was just a good base point for a rest spot after a long swim. What was really cool about it, though, was you could see through the mesh and watch the fish swimming underneath. That would be cool, huh? Um, I think Lex Wex had him set up as a professor illegitimately. I remember seeing that somewhere. Interesting. Oh, you're welcome, Anna Bees. What are you thanking me for? Oh, the trigger warning. um, let's see. Cool to watch this fish swimming underneath, huh? The rest of the afternoon we spent by the pool reading magazines and eating fruit plates. Eventually, he went to his cabana to have a nap later on. Why do I have a feeling something whack is going to happen? Everything just seems a little too stable at the moment. Um, that night after dinner and my mixed cocktail of Xanax and red wine, I asked if he'd like another massage before I went to bed. He just wanted to stay up watching movies in Jeffrey's theater room. I mean, Little E's theater room. As particular as that request was to me, I didn't argue it. I just hoped I hadn't disappointed him in any way that could make it back to Little E. I showed him how to use the remote and turn off the TV when he was finished before going to bed. The next morning, we were both catching a flight from St. Thomas, and we had no time for anything other than breakfast and packing, which saved me from having to be too polite as we said our goodbyes from the terminal in the airport, both hurriedly off in separate directions. Thankfully, I arrived back in Palm Beach only to be told to catch another flight the next day to New York City, where Little E would fix me up the money he owed me for treating his colleague out to an entertaining weekend. Chapter 10. We're at page 61. Dang. It's like an hour and 20 minutes, and we only got through 12 pages. You got to be kidding me. I got a speed read. I was fixed up more than what I had usually made for 2 days, which was great because that car I had been saving for was finally within my reach. I'd been waiting for the freedom a car gives every teenager for a long time. And now that I had over $15,000 saved up, I could pretty much afford to go buy myself a nice car outright. Looking much better than the last time I saw him, little E acknowledged it. I went to his office where he was waiting for me, and he had a guest with him. She was unusual looking to the common stereotype drop dead gorgeous girls little E had normally introduced me to. Of Asian descent, her name was Rena. Little E had met her at an art gallery where some of her own artwork was on display. She had a bubbly persona about her, and I could then understand why little E liked her so much. She fit into the subservient category that he liked his girls to fall under. It was apparent to me that they had already slept together in the short time span they had met. Well, of course, doesn't he sleep with anything that moves within 5 minutes? I thought. As their closeness was oddly noticeable, and I wondered what it was he was offering to her in exchange for her body. I found out later from little E that he was buying her artwork, promising her the world as an artist, telling her he'd have her work in all of the museums in New York City and the best art exhibits. Everyone was promised something and seemed to be bought off in some way or another to be in his company. It was only a matter of time that the truth would come out. It was only a matter of time that the truth would come out. To my own amazement, Rena was to be assisting me in little E's massage that day, not being a total knockout or anything spectacular. Looks wiser, that is, but for some reason, he seemed intrigued enough. As we made our way through his spectacular mansion, I feel like I'm sinking in my chair again. I remember last night melting into the chair. That was my first time catching myself while melting into the chair. Let's see, where's all of those papers so I can keep everything clipped and organized? It's crazy how quickly things get out of control if you don't keep them clipped and organized, right? Alrighty. Where was I? I think right here. As we made our way through his spectacular mansion, she was in total awe at every corner, commenting on the present artwork and the decor that we passed in every hall. It no longer seemed so grandeur to me anymore, but hearing someone else speak about it in such excitement reminded me of the days when all of this seemed so unforeseen. When we got to the massage room, or the dungeon, as I used to put it, for its medieval looking appearance, we firstly, out of custom, all had a steam shower where little E expected me to walk her through a servant's duties, telling her to take his other foot and start rubbing in small circles and stroking the arches of his foot rhythmically. Rena took the instructions well and began to massage him too. When we all went to the shower next, and she followed in my exact lead, washing his body as well, Little E absolutely loved the fact that two teenage girls were duly pampering him. Little E wanted to move to the massage bed, and I had to further begin to show her about the body upon his accord. She mimicked my every move up his legs and buttocks, keeping up with every stroke until he could not contain his arousal any longer and was already requesting us to start kissing each other. The start of the very reason we had even met in the first place. Funny, huh? Funny, not funny. He blatantly stopped the massage, nowhere near being complete, and turned over to announce his increased arousal in a physical abundance of grotesqueness. Yeah, felt this coming. Moving over to the small couch in the corner of the room, he made a space for her to lie me down on the massage table, as she had commanded him to do, in such a domineering tone that he wasn't used to being spoken down to with. From that moment onward, and from the look on his face, he was yearning for her to orchestrate an hour of deliverance upon my meek nature. He started to stroke his erect manhood as he was being tantalized, watching her take over every inch of my body in a dominating act of seduction. Oh, that's what I figured this was. I was left breathless and sore after my first introduction into the world of S&M. That's what I thought was going on. Rena considered herself a dominatrix. She loved bondage, whipping, hitting, and eventually cutting her sex partner with little sharp knives until they subdued to her punishment and agonizing pain. She was absolutely crazy, if you were to ask me, and I couldn't help but wonder what got her into this in the first place. All I knew was that little E was absurdly taking into the appeal of watching us to interact, often with her acting as my mistress who would fondle me with an insurmountable amount of whips and toys. Then she would love to finish off every session by hitting me across the face with a hard blow from the back of her hand and sneering over my curled up body, showing little E her ability to make others surrender to her extreme force. So creepy. Ugh, gross. She could be so opposite all of a sudden and be tenderly intimate with little E, stroking his penis lovingly and even speaking in baby talk to him, which he seemed to adore. He loved us pairing up so much that within months he made Rena official, even renting her an apartment at the same place he had one for me during my extensive trips to New York City, sending us out shopping together at all of the underground seedy sex stores downtown. We would bring him back thousands of dollars worth of sexy outfits, sex toys, and bondage material. His favorite one was a black leather studded collar that led down the back of my spine. Oh, this is rough. I remember reading about this in Nobody's Girl. This is really rough. I don't know right here, but eventually. The lead down the back of my spine to cuff my hands and feet together, offering Rena the most compromising positions to wield her afflictions, one she was excited to pick out for my usage. She was good at eradicating my softer side, though, helping me forge an unpredictable scenario of me turning the tables on her, making her at my will instead of me always being at her twisted discretion. Little E loved the rivalry between us, both striving to dominate the other one. But to me, it was just another way of surviving her punishment. All for show, I thought. She was a madman let loose in a torturesome domain of violent sex and unbearable beatings. I wasn't sure how long I could hold off this charade of S&M. I just didn't want little E to think I couldn't give him everything that she could, always being replaceable in his company. I need to move my position here. My uh, rear end was just getting uncomfortable. Let's see, where was I? She and I could come across as good friends to his blind eye, but it was only a matter of time before the animosity inside of me was going to snap. Doing normal things too made it all half bearable. Having a lot of similar interests, we did fun things like go to the theater to watch Phantom of the Opera, which actually sounds really scary with these people. One sec. Phantom of the Opera. Twisted. Or visit several historical and art museums together. Afterwards, treating ourselves for a giant piece of greasy New York City style pizza. Like I said, we really liked each other purely as friends, but the dominance in the massage chambers was taking its toll on our strange friendship. One average trip back to New York City, she surprised little E with a 6 foot by 6 foot oil painting of her and I lying nude in a yin yang position facing each other. Although we were soliciting each other with sexual innuendo, the picture was still very carefully orchestrated to perfectly portray the darker side of little E's thrills. It was an amazing piece of work, besides the lewdness of it. But she would have known that's exactly what kind of art he liked. He was so astonished by her gift, as he had previously asked her to construct a small painting of us together, but she was not expecting anything of this grand magnitude she had presented him with. He lifted her from the ground and twirled her around before he thanked her profusely and embellished her with his profound gratitude, the only thing little E had to offer. He handed her a small wad of cash as her payment. It was the most appreciation I had ever seen him show a girl. Obviously moved by her gesture, he got her an exhibit in New York City's Metropolitan Museum of Art, where she submitted her very own piece. She sculpted an image of my headshot out of clay, shaping it with the strands of my long hair blowing across my face. I was taken aback myself at her creation. She really did have an amazing talent. If not for her meaner streak, she would have been a great friend. I will never forget Rena for all of the ups and downs we endured together. I can't help but wonder how they didn't have constant STDs and pregnancies. Well, I think she was on the pill, I would think. Um, but yeah, the STDs, they probably did. They probably just had them treated all the time. They probably like lived on penicillin, right? Let's see, where were we? It wasn't too much longer before I finally had enough of the abuse in the bedroom. and I had to tell little E what I was feeling. She was getting even more violent as time went on, and with her questioning me and little E why she didn't get brought on long trips with him. She didn't get the fact that she was just a tool for him to use. Little E said he was already thinking about getting rid of her off of his regular list. He said she was becoming too clingy and he didn't like clinginess or jealousy. I never even got to say goodbye or take the opportunity to keep her as a friend, like a girlfriend to catch up with once in a while. But that's how it was with little E. One day you sat under the blanket of his comfortably, and the next, without any warning, you could be discarded like yesterday's news. She would have taken it hard, but that's the game we were playing, and it was for those who knew what lines not to cross. I was further surprised the next day when little E gave me $1,000 to go shopping downtown Manhattan to find a classy dress, on top of being sent to the exclusive beauty salon of celebrity stylists Frederick Fekkai, Fekkai, for a new look. It was amazing to be pampered like royalty. I walked out of there feeling like I had replaced a young girl with a young woman. I felt beautiful. He had yet another surprise in store for me. Jiz called me and told me I need to go to a photo developing store and ask them for 2 ID photos, then bring them downtown to Little E's Manhattan office. Weird request, I thought. I was more used to posing in full body shots, being sexually exposed as a gift for little E. I did as they asked and took my 2 photos into the office where little E's assistant was waiting for my arrival. Still not telling me what the headshots were for, she took them from me and told me to have a seat for a second time. A moment later, I heard little E call me into the office. I like what you've done with your hair. You've gone more blonde, suits your glowing tan. I replied with an appreciative thank you for sending me to such a renowned hairstylist and shopping money. I showed him my finds for the day, an elegant off shoulder navy blue dress that had 2 layers that would swoosh and sway with every stride. I couldn't wait to wear it on a special occasion, and I wouldn't have to. The pictures I had to bring him, as he would proceed to tell me, were for my first passport. I was so excited. We were going to France for a close friend of little E's and Jiz's birthday party. Famed supermodel Naomi Campbell. Yuck. Um, yeah. One sec. Let me just take a breather. She seems like a very twisted individual, Ms. Campbell. I was so overjoyed with excitement. What girl my age with a background like mine was attending socialite parties and globe-trotting the world? It only made it harder for me to see beyond the elusive walls I had put up to protect myself from the appalling truth. We left in early April, first going to London, Paris, and then our final destination being Saint Tropez in southern France. If Hallmark had a postcard, Saint Tropez would definitely be on the front of it. It was beautiful spring weather, and everywhere you looked, women were dressed in bikini tops. I thought they didn't wear tops. Bikini tops branded with some kind of designer label embedded into it, and the men were following them around like harping dogs in heat. in all of the elegance of the Mediterranean, La Bastide de Saint Tropez was an impressive landmark. Little E and Jiz were staying in one of the private cottages on the park of the grounds, while Emmy and I stayed in separate quarters inside the hotel. The old style cobblestone streets were lined with boutique shops and beauty parlors. It was the hedonistic stomping grounds of the beyond rich and famous. The next day, we went out to lunch at the grand opening of the infamous Nikki Beach Club, where a cheap glass of champagne costs around $200. Funny. Funny, not funny. And if you're not keeping the alcohol consumption flowing like water, you'd be asked to leave to make way for the constant flow of prospectus patrons. That's where I first got to meet Naomi Campbell. She was wearing the typical attire, strutting around southern France, a D&G bikini top, and a wrap around mini skirt to go over the swimsuit's bikini. She was so tall and stunningly beautiful. Her charisma was energetic, funny, and everyone seemed to hang off of her every word and laugh at her every joke. Jiz and little E kissed her cheeks and wished her a happy birthday. Then I was introduced and followed in their suit. She was surrounded by a league of assistants, friends, and fans, which didn't make it easy for us to all converse, but she got enough time in to invite us aboard a yacht of a fellow she was kind of seeing at the time for the before party ahead of tonight's event. We went back to the hotel and I gave little E a massage in his room before we all headed down to the pool to soak in some of the year's first sun's rays. I loved wearing my new ball gown and feeling like a princess. It was absolutely sensational and made me feel as if I floated in the dress. I swept up my long hair in a twisted clip, only letting down a few curly strands and layered on the mascara, receiving many compliments throughout the evening when we eventually left the yacht to make our appearance at the main birthday bash. I couldn't help but feel excitement for the party to come. It was the first celebrity birthday bash I had ever been to. Being introduced to model after model and the rich men that followed them around became dizzying. Little E sat back and watched as I buoyantly worked the dance floor, coming back to the table where he was, only to grab another glass of champagne every now and then. Uh, yeah, I hope she doesn't overdo it, man. Champagne can really give you a hangover big time. I don't know what it is about those bubbles. Every so often, he'd introduce me to someone new, pulling me aside to show off his eager young masseuse to his fellow pedos. These people had so much money pouring out of them. I don't know why he even thought they'd care in the first place. It made me feel good, though. At least I knew I made him proud to have me in his company. Being surrounded by so many of Little E's colleagues and his like minded people that we were considered the most sophisticated and the highly esteemed of today's world nearly made the way I was living lately more fathomable, at least to myself. I thought if anyone looks up to these people and they are all accepting of it, it must be the way the world turns. I danced with a young prince that night, and with all of the help from the bubbly champagne, I couldn't remember his name for the life of me. I wonder if it was like Andrew or I mean, not Andrew, William or Harry. Um, one of my trips back to the table for another glass, on one of my trips back to the table for another glass, little E leaned over to quietly whisper in my ear that it was a prince that I had actually been dancing with, and I didn't faze me in the least way. That it was actually a prince that I had been dancing with, and it didn't faze me in the least way. I went back to the dance floor and continued to let my hair down. It was a fun bash. The entire crowd sang happy birthday to Naomi. And by the time we got back to the car to retreat for the night, I was giddy from the drinking and dancing all evening. We had a guest in the car, and apparently we had already been introduced, but I couldn't even remember his name in the first 5 minutes of our meeting again. He was the hotel owner of some large chain in America called Hilton. I wonder if his last name was Patel. Staying at one of the cottages near Jeffrey, he saw it quaint to loan me out for a night's massage to ruin an almost perfect evening. Little E told me to come back to his room after I was finished with Rick. Thankfully, he reminded me of his name, but also odd, I thought, being so late. I would have never imagined little E could stay up this late, but I never made a fuss out of his requests. I gave him affirmation of my understood instructions and headed off with this stranger into the darkness. It's so gross. I dimmed the bright lights in his bedroom to a softer tone, as if it might aid in the vision of the short, balding man with straggling remnants of curly brown hair left to show for the remaining bits of youth left in him. I had to ask him to undress and lay on top of the towel that I had picked up from the neatly folded pile at the end of his bed and spread it over the duvet. I didn't want to waste a second in his place, getting right to the very reason I was even there. Turning around while he was getting undressed, being our first time together, I wanted to give him the impression I was actually a therapist and not a finale to the end of the night's entertainment. Not exactly what he had in mind, though, given that my impression was already made for him when little E arranged for our meeting in the first place. His chuckle to my response was condescending as he came up behind me and unzipped my dress, which floated to the bottom of the floor. 1 second. So sad. Ugh. I'll let the puppy dog in. Yeah. We're at page 67. Did I just get to the very top of it? Let's see. Or did I skip a page? I might have skipped a page. I'll leave this one here. I'll let that dog in and then I'll figure it out if the dog is still trying to get in. I've had no dogs yet. 1 sec. Hey, babies. Come on in. Come on in, cutie pies. Come on. Come on. Oh, you're just going to sit there? Is that what you're going to do? Is that what you're going to do? Come here. Come here, baby. Oh, you're such a cute. You are so cute. So cute. Take a drink before I put the thing back on. Okay. I think I might have kind of messed up. Where was I? Okay, yeah, I was right. It was just at the top of this page. He came up behind me and unzipped my dress, which floated to the bottom of the floor. As he was saying, you can't really expect to give a massage wearing this. Here, sweetie, I'll help you out of it. He just wanted to see the hidden beauty my clothes were hiding his eyes from seeing. I just went about my way, trying to get his hands off of me and to get him to lie down for a massage. Making quaint conversation with him was pointless, as I was trying to send his thoughts elsewhere other than the apparent perverted schemes replaying in his mind from the heavy breathing he was making and the looks he was giving to me. It's giving me vibes of like the George Costanza character in Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts. The guy who plays George Costanza, Jason Alexander, was the guy who attacked her in the hotel room. Let's see, Miss Bell Bottoms. Yeah, I know she's like Gumby with the way her fur makes her legs like bell bottoms. She's so cute. She's like a teddy bear. She is, and she looks a lot like a Scottish Highlander cow. If you're familiar with those cows that have like the long curly hair, and they're that pretty color like her, kind of caramel. Okay, this is just creeping me out. Let's get this part over with. Come here, little baby. Chi-Chi. Come here, baby. Come here. She just like jumped from halfway across the room. She loves to bounce. She's like Tigger. Look at how cute you are. Look at the screen. Look at how cute you are. Oh man, all the pages almost went flying. Let's see. Let's get this part over with. Absolutely gross. I was using all of the tricks in the turn-off book, even asking him about his wife and kids. Unquestionably, he was in seventh heaven, turning every one of my distractions into another flattering compliment. He was saying things like, I love what you do to me. I've never felt like this before. Come stay with me and I will pay you double, no triple, whatever little E pays you. Knowing he was just a drunk idiot, I wasn't being lured in by any of his offers of money or privileged lifestyle. I knew these cages all too well, and I was better off sticking with the ones accustomed to already. Holding back is going extremely wild, trying to tear off my panties like a hungered wild animal. Yeah. Oh, you don't remember that part of Pretty Woman? It's the horrible part. It's like the lowest part of the whole movie. And it's so sad because George Costanza from Seinfeld, he's a great actor. I mean, he plays a jerk on Seinfeld, but he plays an even worse jerk in Pretty Woman. He's a like a Zen yogi or something like that. He's really into martial arts. I probably blocked it out. I know. I didn't really like that movie. I know a lot of people did. Not so much. I thought it was creepy AF. Like people acted like it had a happy ending. I'm like, gross. Absolutely gross. But in my opinion, it would have had a happier ending if it never began, basically. And I just thought it was really gross, the whole thing from start to finish. And Richard Gere, isn't he? I don't know. Isn't he one of the weirdos, or am I getting him confused with the other weirdo? The guy who got his gun back, um, Mel Gibson. I don't know if Richard Gere's a weirdo like Mel Gibson. But aren't they all? Let's see. Where was I? Um, the part about the wild animal. After all of the champagne I had drunk that night, oh, is she going to puke on him? It gave me the nerve that I needed to know exactly how to handle perverts like this one, who had been no different from every other schmuck in my life, and I quickly shut him up with a blowjob lasting no longer than 2 terrible minutes. That's so gross. It had only been shy of half an hour before I was already getting quickly dressed and hurried out of his cottage door. When I got to Little E's cottage, I rushed through the door and told Little E and Jiz, who were sitting in front of the fireplace reading books, that I never wanted to see that guy ever again. When they asked me what was the matter, I told them of everything that had happened that night, even how he offered me to come work for him, getting paid triple. I established a lot of trust with Little E that night. He asked me why I didn't accept the offer, and I responded, "Who would look after you if I were gone?" Like a caring grandfather would do, he pulled me into his chest for a hug and told me it meant a lot to him. It was so late and I was so tired, but I still had to give Little E his massage that night. He asked me to just rub his feet as he fell asleep, and thankfully he was out like a light in no time. The next morning, I took 2 headache tablets and a ginger ale instead of a coffee, trying to contain my hangover as best as possible behind a pair of sunnies. It was mid-afternoon by the time I had felt like myself again. We spent the day yacht hopping, soaking in the sunny weather, while Little E and Jiz caught up with an old acquaintance. Emmy and I were just accessories to look good on the arms of them. The next day, we wrapped the tail end of our trip and commenced our flight back into the U.S. I was paid a generous amount and set off to go car shopping as soon as I got back to Florida. Through a private seller, I was able to pay outright for my car. I got a Dodge Dakota in cherry red and immediately had an impressive sound system put in it. She was my first pride and joy and taste of freedom. I would love to drive her down to Lake Worth Beach to sit in my car and watch the waves while I listened to my stereo blare music and puffed on a J. Letting the rest of the world pass by, I sat back and watched them walk past, wondering to myself what their story was about. I turned 17 that summer. See, she was 16 when she was at Naomi Campbell's party. She always tries to say that she was 17. She wasn't. It's that fuzzy math, muddying up the timeline, the chronology. She was 16. That photo where she looks like she's 12. Let's see. Um, where's that picture where she looks like she's 12, but she is 16? But they always try to say that she's like 17 or something. Where she's at the party, just looking like such a little tiny child. Let's see. You know the photo I'm looking for. But I know it's in here. Just give me 1 second. Oh, this is getting tiring though. Why is it hiding? It's hiding so well. Here, since it's taking so long, I'll just show you a hilarious picture of Jeffrey when he was a teacher at Dalton High School, looking like Mr. Cotter. Welcome back, Cotter. And this one's not quite as funny, but still, it's the 70s, baby. Look at that collar. Oh, what a pig. Where? Am I getting closer? This is getting really annoying. I didn't think it was this far back. And it's possible that I passed it already, but while we're here, why don't we just look at a picture of the best friends hanging out? They're freaking ugly mugs. Absolutely ugly mugs. Here's another picture of the best friends with one of their babes between them. Don't you just love the way Jizz and little T try to pretend like they hardly knew little E? All right, well, I guess maybe I'll just give up since I'm simply not finding it. Did I just pass over it? Was it like early on there? I'm going to go back because I'm thinking that's what happened. I'll just give up though if it's not showing itself. It's the picture from Naomi Campbell's birthday party where little Jenna is just wandering around looking like a lost puppy, just totally not fitting in. And it's like I deleted the pictures or something, which I know I didn't. I was just looking at them a couple of days ago on my phone because I've got a lot of pictures on my phone, and then I've got a lot of pictures on my my laptop, of course. But yeah, I might just have to give up. Let's see. I'm not the giving up type, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do, huh? Or I can just Google it and pull it up more quickly. That's what I'll do. Let's just go to the Google. Virginia Gouffre at Naomi Campbell's birthday party. So see, even here it says Naomi Campbell's 31st birthday party in St. Tropez, May of 2001. She was 17 years old at the time. No, she was 16. It just said so in her story. Was it 2001? If she was born in 83, no, it wasn't 2001. It would have been like 1999. Maybe 2000. But there's the picture of Jenna and Naomi is in the black. And Jenna says that she's 16 in this picture, although the internet tries to say she's 17 in this picture. But she really looks like she's even younger. And then this is the other picture of her at that party that I don't know if you'll be able to see. This one is good. It's like, because that one's like a profile picture and this one's more head on, but it's kind of grainy. But she just looks so young. So very, very young. And yeah, there's not a lot of really good pictures of her, which is sad. It's like she didn't have the loving family around her trying to take and preserve nice pictures. But let's see what year Naomi Campbell was born real quick. One sec, and then we'll get back to reading. Naomi Campbell, date of birth. So it says May 22nd, 1971. So if it was her 31st birthday, that would have been 2001. But Virginia would have been 16, not 17. Anyway, she does look very young. Okay. There was a rumor about Richard Gere, but it wasn't true. I don't remember what the rumor was, if you remember. Wait, now I have no desire to ever meet any of the elite. I know. He was so gross. Yes, a pig. She does look very young. Yeah, very, very young. So where was I? I got all carried away with that. Sorry. I got all off of track. But yeah, it's annoying when they try to misrepresent the time frame and her age. Some of that can be human error, but I don't like to cut them slack when they're trying to obfuscate. Where was I? The Dodge Dakota and the Cherry Red. Yeah. Is this where I was? Is that where I went off on that tangent? I turned 17 that summer and had accumulated a string of exotic destinations that I had traveled in such a short time. I was given more makeup and a pair of diamond earrings from Little E and Jiz. Jiz only wished me a happy day, wondering at times if she felt threatened by Little E and my closeness. We went to the island after we left New York City, and I asked if Sarah would be meeting us, mentioning it had been a while since we had last seen her. He said he had some bad news about her. Expecting the worst, thinking that she had gotten hurt or something, I was astounded when Little E told me that she had been sent off his island, like banished. You're off the island. With one of his friends. He had been sent to his island with one of his friends for a couple of days. And when the housekeepers were cleaning her room, they found a stash of cocaine left out carelessly in the bathroom. He said he had no choice but to let her go. Addicts with no respect for themselves or his wishes had no leeway in Little E's book. He didn't mind that I dabbled in rugs once in a while as long as I never brought them along with us on any trips, except for my Xanax, which he didn't mind because it was pharmaceutical and most of all wouldn't cause him trouble being a legal narcotic. Sarah took it too far when she crossed international borders with an illegal rug, risking her welfare and almost costing little E public attention. She lost her apartment and contacts in the acting world, only hearing from acquaintances once in a while that she was sinking deeper and deeper into the black hole of addiction. It was sad to find out, as I always did like her. At the island, Jiz had just recently obtained her helicopter pilot license and waited to get some practice airtime and flew little E and I to St. John, where we picked up Alexandria Cousteau. Was that like Jacques Cousteau's offspring? The granddaughter to the inventor of the scuba tank and underwater explorer Jacques Cousteau. Jiz was out to set us a fright in the air, but it was all talk. She was actually an impressive pilot. Still a daredevil, though. She got her kicks out of hearing us fret on the earmuffs intercoms. Little E made it clear that Alexandria was a guest when I was told to adhere to her if she wanted a massage, which I obliged her with several times during our first meeting. It was little E who instigated that her and I reenact as lovers in lesbian acts with foreplay and penetration. I couldn't imagine a girl uh, which with such high prospects lowering herself to something of little E's standards. But I later found out through little E that he had donated money to her continuous explorations into marine life and habitats. She had followed in her family's footsteps, all of them involved in marine biology in some way or another. We actually got along very well, and she was a real decent girl and loved talking about her passion, everything underneath the water's surface. When I wasn't busy giving massages to everyone around, her and I would hang out together, often going swimming in the crystal clear pool of the ocean that the Caribbean had to offer. Once we swam out so far, not paying attention to our location, we were carried out to sea by the current. We took turns on the backs of each other, taking breaks against the strong ocean tide. It was almost a possibility that we were nearly drowned out there. If it weren't for some guys on a boat out fishing for the day that they caught us in their view, they picked us up and brought us back to the island where we were reprimanded by a worried little E and Jiz to first of all let someone know where you were going at all times and never lose sight of the shore while out for a swim. After that learning experience, I took their heed and proceeded with caution. I had a newfound respect for the ocean and its mysteries. Yeah, the rip tides are so bad. Um, they try to make it sound like she was almost an adult. Exactly. Absolutely, Annabise. That's precisely. Just always 17. But no, she was 15, 16, and then 17. And she was with them for at least 4 years, if not 5, if not starting when she was 14. I think she met them right before she turned 15, personally. From the way that this reads, remember that part where it says, I turned 15 that year. I worked on my GED and I got a summer job at Mar-a-Lago. So her birthday's in August. So a summer job would imply well before August. Because a lot of people consider August to be like the end of summer, like fall, right? Basically, right? I mean, I don't. With my birthday being the same day as hers, August 9th, I always felt like August was like the middle of summer, but a lot of people see August as the end of summer. I mean, Memorial Day is the beginning of summer, unofficial, and Labor Day is the end of summer, unofficial. And yeah, I guess August 9th is only 3 weeks before Labor Day. So I guess you could call that the end of summer. All right. Glad we cleared that up. Um, Having such a lover of the water as a guest, I made little E want to explore parts of his Caribbean that he had never seen before. Let me reread that. Having such a lover of the water as a guest made little E want to explore parts of his Caribbean he had never seen before. The next morning, we were met by a scuba instructor in St. James and given a few lessons in how to use gear and more tips like how to descend slowly to the ocean floor as not to cause blood clots, as well as visual hand signals to communicate underwater. Yeah, scuba diving is so dangerous. My husband used to do it. I've never done it. It was so exhilarating beneath the water's surface. No voices to listen to, only the enchanting sights to take in. We explored the surrounding reef and found a large squid, many of sea urchins, and the magnificent colored coral that housed a many of the rich variety of the local species of fish. It was such a great sight to take in, holding a permanent mental picture of those adventures to carry in my head for all times. We all had such a great time that little E hired the same scuba instructor to come out the next day to scuba dive the safer parts around his island. We got bored quickly and not much to see, but seaweed and a fish here and there. It didn't take long before Jiz decided for us all to explore other numerous locations by boat. Little E needed a bit of convincing at first, and the instructor was quick to assure him that he knew his way well around these waters. Of course, he would say that. He was getting paid a hell of a lot to do this in the first place. Why not extend it a few more hours? The clear water glistened, and the tropical array of marine life was on display as we wanted to stop at so many places, but you could see as beautiful as it was, it could be as equally dangerous. It took so long as we had to veer away from so many desirable spots. Finally, we found a good place that the scuba instructor thought was safe. He buddied us up into pairs, and we jumped off the back of the boat into the crystal aqua blue waters, beginning our descent slowly into the darker regions of the ocean floor. We were situated on open water with a cavern of reefs to venture in and around down below. It seemed to be quite a choice to scuba in, one that our guide said he wasn't familiar with, but to alleviate his bored clientele deemed safe enough to swim around. It was little E and the guide together, Jiz and Emmy, and I was paired up with Alexandria. Miles, the houseman, came with us and stayed on the boat just in case something went wrong. And lucky he did. We were all too far underwater to hear his alarming screams of distress when shadows lurking in the murky distance started appearing closer and closer. Jiz actually looked frightened for once as she gave us the signal to start ascending upwards, reminding us to hold reminding us by holding her ears not to go up too quick, or as we were previously warned, before we could pop a blood vessel in our brain and hemorrhage to death. Not a very lovely image, but neither was getting torn apart by sharks. That's what I was thinking it probably was. These giant shadows became clearer, and soon enough we could recognize their indistinct species as the terrifying and more aggressive breed of sharks, the hammerhead. Grabbing Miles's hand, I was the last one ahead of the guide to get on the boat, imagining the worst as I waited behind Emmy and Alexandria, who were next to follow after little E and Jiz. I was in too much shock to scream or cry. I just told myself I had to stay calm to get out of this alive. Unlucky for us, we found out later that we were in their breeding territory and being sent a clear message that we were soon to be on the menu to their feeding frenzy. We all felt like we had cheated death, and I know it wasn't only my heart that was still beating out of my chest when we headed back to Little E's island. Little E was pale as his designer sheets and looked like he had aged another 10 years in such a scared state. Jiz took the heat off herself, even barely taken a notice of beforehand, and decided to poke fun at all of us frantically scurrying to get out of the water. It was just her nature, as I had never seen her move so quickly either. We got back to the island and all collapsed, our fatigued bodies in our own beds for a long nap. Refreshed up and much more relaxed, we regaled our horrendous story again over dinner, this time in laughter. The following afternoon, Jiz piloted us all in the helicopter to St. John's Airport, and we said goodbye to Alexander, where we all parted ways. I met her a few more separate times at Palm Beach at Little E's mansion, but she wasn't a regular of his, probably not as easy as the troubled girls were to bribe. Chapter 11. I'm scared of water. Yeah, I'm not scared of water, but I'm very scared of sharks. I like the water. I'm a lifeguard. I'm not a lifeguard at the moment, but I was a lifeguard from the time I was like 50 until maybe 55. So recently. I've always liked swimming, but I never thought about becoming a lifeguard until the local pool had trouble staying open because they didn't have enough lifeguards. So I was like, I guess I'll do it then. And I enjoyed it, but not as much as swimming. I love swimming. Lifeguarding is kind of boring, but I like I like being bored. As the mother of four, I find it a luxury to get bored. It's like a delicacy. Um, all right. Keep the pages together. Get some chapstick. Maybe I should take a quick bathroom break. We're at 2.5 hours. Yeah, I think I'll do a quick bathroom break. I don't know if I'm able to get the mute thing so that you don't have to hear the toilet flush. I don't know how to do it. Like I thought it would be this right here, but yeah, there. Can you hear me? Is it mute? I don't know. We'll see. Are you guys going out? Oh, sorry, baby. Going out. Sorry, babe. Get my pillows. I stepped on the girl's foot if you heard her squeal. So, yeah, I don't know why this thing doesn't seem to work, but that's fine. I will just get my chapstick and then continue to read. Annabise, you don't know how much I appreciate you stalking me. It's cute that you said that. Yeah, I really do appreciate you, girl. It's probably the headset. Yeah, right, because I've never really used a headset before. You know, I've used my AirPods, and then I have my mic, and then I've had the headset for a little while, and I'm glad I had it because the thing was giving me so much trouble a couple days ago. But I bet it would work with my mic too. I almost used the mic tonight, but I thought I'll just go with the headset since it's already like set up. And even though it's not that big of a deal to set up the mic, everything's a big deal. And I didn't want to take any longer than I already had all day to get started. All right, so water and chapter 11. Page 71. So I'm going to try to get to at least page 85 because that's where I had started. So let's see if we can do 15 pages right now, right here, right now. Throughout the remainder of the quickly passing year, I was on a constant move with little E, attending various dinner parties, mostly with other esteemed billionaires and widely acclaimed scientists. Little E likes to surround himself with the most brilliant and powerful minds, filling his little black book with some of the most esteemed and even infamous people in today's wealthy society. So there is a book. Remember how they tried to say that he didn't have a little black book? He did have a little black book. This is why they had to unalive her. I'm telling you. She knew way too much. I mean, she was probably with them for 4 or 5 years because it's 2000 until 2002 is the official narrative, but it's more like 1998 or even 1997 until 2002. Okay. Continuing. That little black book. His little black book with some of the most esteemed and even infamous people in today's wealthy society. It was during those intellectual gatherings that my body was also put on the banquet menu, but this time for a powerful Senator George Mitchell and another prominent Nobel Peace Prize, a Nobel Prize winning scientist. There, I can speak. Whose name would be mentioned, but for all of the life of me can no longer remember. They would be only some of the recognizable figures of the high society that became added to my list of clientele. Of course, being introduced to for a lot more than just a client of massage. As an amusement of Little E's associates, I also knew my place was to entertain, but not to every desired content. I was to show them a good time, but not the way I would have to use technique and effort for Little E. The very teachings from Little E himself, or my tutor, as he liked to so eloquently put it, consistently being used and adored for the likeness of my youthful looks. I was becoming very accustomed to my lifestyle with Little E, never really relaxing into it. but just accepting this as being as good as it'll ever get for me. I didn't think I should be complaining. Wasn't I being offered a life in exchange for servitude? Just letting the signs of my anxiety and depression pass me by while I blanketed them with my pills, suffocating under a blanket of pain is all I was really doing. I spent Christmas and New Year's holidays with little E in New York City, who doesn't celebrate the occasion as he is of Jewish descent. Not that he was a religious man, anyways. I never even saw him celebrate Hanukkah either. We firstly stayed at his ranch in Santa Fe for a week, then left for a long plane trip to Paris, France, where we all suffered jet lag for the next 24 hours. We all stayed in a grand hotel with a view, the Champs Elyse, Elyse. I don't know what that is, the Champs Elyse. Emmy and I shared a room with her gifted ability to make new contacts in just a few hours. She brought out a J to share on the rooftop at nighttime while we were overlooking the lit up Eiffel Tower. We never got really close as buddies, but we both knew what we were indebted to and felt each other's sorrows. All four of us went shopping at Chanel, D&G, Ralph Lauren, and many other little exclusive boutiques the following afternoon. As a gift, Jeffrey bought me a white terry cloth goose feathered sofa and had it sent back to my apartment in Florida, and bought some new tapestries to have sent back to Santa Fe for his ranch. We also visited his up and coming Paris apartment. It was a modern, typical flat being refurbished, and we went to see how it was all looking. Little E liked to fuss about every detail and harass the builders about their work, changing last minute details at a whim. Days and many croissants later, we left for Spain, feeling bloated and sleepy. We only stayed in Spain for the afternoon, going to see another astounding Moroccan castle for little E to replicate at one of his many mansions. It was only a short plane ride to Tangler, Africa for more castle hopping. We arrived at the historic landmark and the only five-star hotel in Tangier. I said Tangler, sorry. I think it's Tangier, right? The only five-star hotel in Tangier, and Al Minza in the village of Ville Nouvelle, Nouvelle, Nouvelle. The city and outskirts were still very hostile at the time. Females being warned not to walk the streets alone and not to leave the house after dark or be at risk of being raped or worse. When we got to the room, it was oozing with every expected bit of extravagance a luxurious historical palace should offer, until I was greeted with a pile of monkey poo in the very middle of my bed. Not a happy camper, I called little E and Jiz and Emmy into my adjoining room, and they all had quite a good laugh at my expense. Within a moment's notice of a complaint call to the front desk, and we had an attendant cleaning up my bed linen. The cleaner noticed the window was still opened. He warned not to leave it ajar at nighttime, just in case another monkey wanted to make himself comfortable in my quarters. Jiz joked that maybe I should keep it open. I might find a suitable husband before I get any older. Should I? And always the instigator of a good joke, but unable to take one herself. She didn't like when I poked back that it was more in her recent taste of men, since she loved to brag about her rendezvous with her various lovers. Once she came back, giddy as a schoolgirl, with an explosion of news, with all the buildup and excitement in her voice. You'd think she was the next crowned princess. You'd think she was the next crown princess. But she had given George Clooney a blowjob in the bathroom at some random event. She never let that one down. So romantic. Disgusting. We all went to explore the towns surrounding Moroccan castles. Can you hear my daughter yelling at the dog? We all went I can hear even with the headphones on. We all went to explore the towns surrounding Moroccan castles and meet their royalty that lived in them. Little E's personal interior designers met us at the residences. They walked around hurriedly, scribbling notes in their clipboards and whispering between themselves. The palaces were historically unique and beautiful, but I wondered how could they live so grandeur behind these walls when they lived in a city of such poverty-stricken squabble. I think she means squalor. Squabble? That's hilarious. Pretty sure she means squalor. So cute. Beggars lined the streets. People could just go missing and no one could care less. And you heard of barbaric red rums happening every night. Against the advice of the palace attendant and Little E's wishes, I decided to take a stroll one afternoon. I think she was wanting it to be over personally. Mainly just to take photos of exotic Africa and do some shopping in the village markets. But I ended up being intrigued by a group of young children playing in the streets. When I was noticed watching them, about 15 of them came up to me and began to beg for money and food. I was overtaken by the poor, hungry children and felt sad for them and all and wished I could help out somehow. When the tide of kids washed away and the streets were empty, I was overcome with intrigue at these two little boys, brothers, I found out later on, and their only toy was an empty can they were kicking to each other in the middle of the street. Intelligent kids, they were able to speak 3 different languages, including English, and I was interested to ask them about life here. They didn't seem to notice or be bothered by their poverty-stricken lives. They told me about their school and parents, and I thought I had heard the saddest story ever, but they were accustomed to living like that. I had been so accustomed to my degrading lifestyle so long. Let me read that sentence. You've had dreams of drowning, Annabese? That's freaky. I've never had a dream of drowning. That would scare me a lot. Yes, she definitely was unalived. Right. I just can't believe that they went to these extravagant palaces and all. He wasn't that rich. It was all just because he supplied little girls so sick. He was that rich, Annabese. He had $500 million to his name when he was found deceased in prison. $500 million. 555 million that he had transferred 2 days before he was allegedly, is it 550 million? at least 550 million. Yeah. I mean, it seems like a lot to me. I'm sure it seems like a lot to you too. But yeah, I know. I mean, all of these people like Elon and his trillionaire status, it's all just bull crap. I mean, the rich get so much given to them for free and they're so entitled. And then they like to act like normal working people are just, the scum of the earth. And they like to act like poor people are criminals, right? Let's see. Yes, she definitely was unalived. Who were you talking about? She was definitely unalived. Who did we mention? I don't even remember now. They are entitled but so morally bankrupt. Yeah, Annabee's Virginia. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm glad you said that because I couldn't agree with you more. I am adamant about that. Okay. But yeah, it's not a popular opinion. People are like, no, she offed herself. Her brother says so. Everybody that knows her says so. It's like, they might believe that she did, but when somebody passes away unattended, you'll never freaking know definitively unless you have a videotape of it. But even videotapes don't show everything. But I'm sure that there's videotape. I mean, we don't even know what kind of like home security system she had at that ranch. But just the whole thing with that ridiculous bus hitting her in front of her driveway and the way it's like never mentioned that it was in front of her driveway. It's always mentioned like it was just somewhere around town. That right there is just bullshit. Yeah. Like the same people that took Princess Lady Diana out are the same people that took her out, more than likely. But also, you got Dershowitz, you got Donnie Two Dolls, and then you got Jiz. Jiz definitely wanted her dead. Of course, Jiz was very threatened by the connection that Virginia had with little E, and also because Virginia was so much younger than her. She was very threatened by her. This ice water is so good. I love ice water. I used to try to drink my water tepid because I was told it was healthier. When I started just putting ice in it, it was when I started gardening in the summer that I was like, no, I got to have the ice in it. And I've been addicted to ice water ever since. But enough rambling. Let's get back to this because I'm on page 73. We only have about 10 more pages to go. And then I'm to where I started, which I started at like 85 or 86. And then I might reread that, but not tonight. Like that would be probably tomorrow. But then I can read it full size because I'm still on this half size lettering that is really hard on the eyes. All of the stuff surrounding her deletion is extremely suspicious. And yes, Jiz probably wanted her gone. She needed her gone in order to get the sweetheart deal that she got this summer. There's no way Virginia would have put up with that crap. And I think our president needed her gone too. The Royals, Donnie Two Dolls, Jizz, and Dershowitz. Dershowitz is key. That guy's MF. Okay, where was I? I think I was right here. They didn't seem to notice or be bothered by their poverty stricken lives. They told me about their school and parents, and I thought I had just heard the saddest story ever. But they were accustomed to living like that, like I had been so accustomed to my degrading lifestyle for so long. Yes, for sure, he did, and the Royals. Agreed. All of the stuff surrounding her deletion is extremely suspicious, and yes, Jizz probably wanted her gone. I was compelled to empty out the contents of my purse, giving them over $2,000 in U.S. currency. A passerby snapped a photo of the kids and me for myself to take home as a personal souvenir before they rushed home to proudly show their parents the money. I told little E later on of my good deed, and he couldn't believe I'd give away my money so carelessly. He told me I had set up their parents with enough money to feed and shelter their family for a year. Wasn't that a good thing? I couldn't believe it. Not that I was well off or anything close to it, but to realize how lucky I was and to not have compassion for the lesser off, especially children of a third world country. I wouldn't be human anymore. Then again, what did I expect from someone who could numerously steal another man's daughter for the use of his own sexual pleasure with great ease? Yes. We went out to lunch the following day with little E's team of designers to wrap things up, and after little E's afternoon massage, he went to the palace to have a nap. When I was all alone, I thought I'd go see the culture of the unique markets again, and this time buy some trinkets to bring home. I got to sightseeing and took pictures of the legs of lamb hung over the blood drenched doorway over people's homes as to ward off evil spirits and the ghettos where the local villagers called home. I walked into many of the market stalls and saw the most peculiar antiques, such as weaponry with the blood of its last victim stained on its sharp blades, and body pieces of various animals for the use of religious sacrifices. Gross. I was more interested in the different culture and respecting their ancient way of life with interest instead of squirming like a tourist and getting grossed out. That would be me. I thought it was so educational and enthralling. In fact, I ended up buying a few sacrificial trinkets to have sent to my apartment in Palm Beach. Not to say that I wasn't looking forward to getting back to the luxuries of Western civilization. It was a bit like camping, fun and adventurous, but as equally dangerous and thrilling. When we left for the final destination of our trip, I was looking forward to eating normal food again and not one to stray for foreign dishes. I was more of a cheeseburger and pizza kind of girl, a true sign of my American heritage. We landed at the Heathrow International Airport and greeted by a driver that would take us to Jizz's townhouse in London's Central that little E had recently bought and refurbished as a gift for her. Emmy said goodbye at the airport, leaving us to go to her hometown in the rural countryside nearby to visit family for a 6-week holiday from work. It wasn't a very long drive before we were in the heart of the city and at Jiz's place. I thought it was a cheery townhouse that had character, and the historical pub in front of it and cobblestone streets only added a unique charm to its presence. They were going they were going out to dinner and invited me along with them, but seeing I was so exhausted from all the traveling and looked a bit melancholy, I apologetically declined going out for dinner that evening. I rather would be taking a few pills to catch up on some needed sleep. Are you sure you're okay? Jiz asked as she showed me to my room, more considerate than she normally was, but I assured her that I was in absolute good health, just tired from all of the recent jet lag. Without another word, um, said, she whisked off downstairs to the car where little E was waiting for her. I took the liberty to call my parents' house and say hello and catch up with them, since I hadn't been home at all for the holiday season this year, always too busy working. They sounded really happy to hear from me, and my mom put me on the phone to talk with my brothers as well. I got to tell them about my travels abroad, and I had some cool tribal stuff from Africa that I bought for them. They sounded so proud of me, all of them, and why shouldn't they be? In everyone's convinced mind, I was making great money, traveling the world and meeting new faces everywhere I went. Why should I spoil anyone's delusions, especially mine? I took my sleeping tablets and had a bath before falling into a deep and much needed sleep. The next morning, I was woken by Jiz, who I could tell was in a chirpy mood by the way she paraded through my closed door, saying, "Wake up, sleepyhead," and opened the window's shutters to let in the bright sunlight. She had never done anything like that before, and I knew immediately something big was happening. I know what's happening. She sat down on my bed as I rolled over from my deep slumber, and I was able to muster for an explanation as to why she was awake so early. Besides the fact that it was 10 o'clock in the morning and nearly time for brunch, we have a big day planned out for you today, she said. She was waiting for my cue to ask her, "What are we doing?" When I did, she responded with a convincing enthusiasm. "We're going shopping for a new ensemble." She paused for a moment to build the suspense before completing her sentence. "To go dancing with a Prince of England this evening." Hoping it would be one of the younger generations, I was disappointed when she told me. He was the Duke of York, Charles' younger brother, Andrew. I looked at her with a fake surprised look, one I had to use on many occasions in my time with them to give an impression of excitement. "What? Wow," I exclaimed with my gifted acting ability. It was a sad realization, but I had grown more accustomed to seeing people for their significance rather than the good qualities they possessed, and was able to grin and bear the thought of what I expected lay in store for me. Jiz and I left shortly thereafter for the many lanes of designer shops to choose from in London. Her pep talks to prepare me for my duties toward royalty went on, giving me the obscure impression I was something of importance, at least for more than an evening. "Make sure you're bubbly, energetic. Nobody Make sure you're bubbly and energetic. Nobody wants a dead horse was one of the cheap tools she instilled with me. Who knows where this would lead for you was another. As the day grew shorter, my anxiety only heightened, anticipating the prince's arrival, and unable to decide an outfit. I picked out three. Our last stop for the day was Burberry's for a nice handbag to complement our chosen attire. We got back to her townhouse with still a couple of hours spare to get ready. After trying on all three outfits and many mental debates with myself later, I decided on the pink mini tee and dazzling pair of denims with horses embroidered into a pattern. It seemed a lot more my style and age group than the other two older looking sophisticated dresses I had picked out. I told myself I was going dancing at a club, not an opera, as most young girls can be during their body changes into womanhood. I felt awkward, big feet, freckles, and body hair in unwanted places. There are things you just don't want when you're 17, and then you see these iconic billboards of what femininity is supposed to represent and just don't fit into that picture, never feeling what we all are already. Absolutely perfect. Never feeling what we all are already. Absolutely perfect. By the time I had got ready, I was a nervous wreck, but trying to keep my cool on the outside was an act. I thought it would be a good idea to take a few Xanax before the evening unraveled and my anxiety went through the roof. A few Xanax, that's pretty hardcore. um, Me too. I would be so grossed out. Yeah, the royal formerly known as Prince. Exactly. I love calling him that now. Little E and I were sitting on the lounge in the lounge room downstairs waiting for Jiz to finish getting ready. The room was silent, only stillness in the air. I stared at the mural painted onto the wall that I was facing. It was an interesting piece of artwork. In great detail, it illustrated a happy looking family sitting on a bench overlooking a pond that resided on a large piece of land with a beautiful home displayed. There were also hunting hounds and hunters chasing a game fox like the notorious English hunt pieces throughout history. Little E took notice of my enchantment into the picture and in a hushed voice proceeded to tell me that it was a portrait of Jiz's childhood, the part she could be proud of. I never realized how prominent her family's history was in England. Apparently, as to Little E's attest, her father was born of poor Jewish descent in Czechoslovakia, most of his family being killed upon Nazi invasion in 1939, fleeing to join the British Army as a young man. He changed his name a few times and made a lot of contacts in the field. After the war, a newfound Robert Maxwell went into publishing using his army contacts to establish a business initially built upon publishing scientific books first occupied Germany from occupied Germany. In time, Maxwell acquired several British newspapers, among them the Daily Mirror, countering his wits against the likes of Rupert Murdoch along the way. Rupert Murdoch. However, while constructing his publishing empire, Maxwell compiled astronomical debts, and his equivocal Financial dealings attracted the attention of governing authorities that judged him not to be looking out for his company's best interest. And in the end, it transpired that Robert Maxwell had been using proceeds from his employees' pension funds to meet his financial debts, ruining the future of thousands of employees. Once an esteemed member of parliament and publishing mogul, Robert's body was found floating in the Atlantic Ocean after he was found to be missing from his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, named after his favorite child. Yeah, she was the youngest of 9, and we all know you're supposed to have a favorite child, right? um, let's see. While cruising the Canary Islands in 1991, Little E went on to tell me that when her father died, she was inconsolable and in a very bad state. He picked her up from the trenches of despair and took her under his wing, and it's there she stayed comfortable ever since. To Jiz, his particular need to have so many women around, and even his taste in younger than legal ones, didn't seem unconventional to her. It was her own father who was deemed a womanizer and even took a second wife. Oh, I didn't know about that. While still married to Jiz's mother. I would have never guessed this carefree, spirited, and vivacious woman had ever endured such sorrows. I couldn't help but look at her in a different light from then on, but not letting her know that I knew, to avoid any altercations between us. Like clockwork, Jiz came downstairs 5 minutes before Prince Andrew were to arrive, wearing a tight-fitted white woolly turtleneck singlet and a nice pair of loose-fitting trousers, looking elegant and casual at the same time. A very hard look to achieve, but one Jiz had always easily mastered. They both seemed at ease, poking fun at my obvious nervous state. Just another ordinary night out for this extraordinary couple. The knock came at the door just after 6 o'clock in the evening. Jiz greeted him and the guard who would wait for his return in the car. She let him down the hall to where Little E and I were sitting. We both stood up, and Little E shook his hand while Jiz proceeded to introduce me, as I was taught by her was English custom. We both kissed on the cheek. We all sat down on the lounges for some tea and biscuits while conversing idle chit chat. By the sounds of it, Jiz knew well of his recently divorced ex-wife Fergie, whom they were all taking turns in slandering her for one reason or another. It was apparent there were some fresh wounds still lingering on, and as good friends do, it was their way of helping him get over her. When his daughters were mentioned, Jiz and Little E treaded lightly, only speaking highly of them and offering their sympathy to the young ones. The conversation turned to a much lighter subject. Andrew wanted to know more about this young guest they had to join them out for dinner and dancing that evening. And then the spotlight turned on me. I was more nervous than I had ever been before a night out with someone. Probably the build-up Jiz and Little E had hyped this meeting up to be. To break the ice, she played her favorite guessing game. How old do you think Jenna is? When Andrew guessed correctly, I was 17 years old. She was surprised, thinking I could have passed for younger. I guess we're all going to have to trade you in soon. I guess we're going to have to trade you in soon, she laughed. Always the first one to throw her quick-witted two bits, all of them chuckling along with her. Hardly a laugh at all, unknown to me at the time. His eldest daughter is only 5 years my junior. I was finding it hard to make much conversation in the beginning, just laughing when the occasion called for it, and keeping up with Andrew's constant glances in my direction was all I could manage. The restaurant was a close drive for us with Andrew and his two guards, his driver following behind us. I was seated next to the prince for dinner, and Jiz and little E next to each other. An evening preordained. I was supposed to flatter him with compliments and dote on his every word spoken, but I didn't even do that for little E blatantly. It would have felt awkward to act like a bimbo for him. Instead, I remained calm, cool, and collected, hoping that my nervousness wouldn't spill out at any given moment. The next place we were going was much more my style, and I found it easier to relax. We pulled up next to a nightclub called Tramp, a members only nightclub and one of the most exclusive haunts in the world for the rich and famous, to be seen for the last 40 or so years since its doors first opened. Andrew's guards waited outside while we all went in to hit the dance floor. Little E, being the social introvert that he was, found the first available empty seat in the corner, but facing the dance floor to spend the evening watching everyone else have fun, and Andrew went to the bar to grab us all drinks. He came back with sparkling water for little E and a cocktail for the rest of us, already knowing that little E never drank alcohol. We downed our glasses and made our way to the crowded dance floor, where I had the prince's utmost attention, moving his hands across the curves of my body, not to shy away from the fact that he was in public. He was whispering sweet nothings into my ear and kissing my neck. Gross. One sec. Yes, I would be out cold. Let's see. So I'm at the top of page 78. I think I'm just going to try to get to page 85 and then call it a night, because it's just about 11:15. We've been on for 3 hours, and my voice is just getting a little tired. So I appreciate you, dear, keeping me going. You're the best. Living it up on a Saturday night, right? This is how we party. I would just giggle and not really knowing how to reply to an aging man with a bad smile and terrible moves. He was hot when he was younger. We'll have to give him that, right? I don't blame you. Well, we can chat after we get to page 85 if you want, Annabise. There is some like current stuff to catch up on. I don't want to chat about it right now because then I'll get carried away and forget to keep reading. Yeah, so I'm going to keep reading. A bad smile and terrible moves. It would sound too much of a lie if I retaliated back about his swagger. That was a weird. I would just giggle, not really knowing how to reply to an aging man with a bad smile and terrible moves. It would sound too much of a lie if I retaliated back about his swagger. He was the most incredibly hideous dancer I had ever seen, and couldn't help but laughing on the dance floor and shooting glances of embarrassment to little E and Jiz, who were having a good time laughing at my expense, as they always did. After an hour of pelvic smashing to the DJ's pumping mixes, we finally exited the floor. His Royal Highness was dripping with sweat and ready to embark onto a quieter scene, where he said we could be alone, not knowing that it had already been arranged for all of us to meet back at Jiz's place, but complied with his so-called thoughtful request. I was so anxious about getting back to the townhouse, knowing what expectations I would have to not only meet but also exceed in this case. Jiz and little E seemed impressed at my attempts to entertain His Royal Highness, so far giving him exactly what he wanted, the impression that I idolized him. They told me that he really liked me and was having a great time so far. When we got to the townhouse, his guards walked him to the door, staying to wait outside in the car. Jiz met him and brought him upstairs, where little E and I were in the study. We all chatted in the hall for a few minutes, and I was able to have little E snap a photo of us together, one that would cause much controversy for the Buckingham Palace in many years to come. The conversation didn't linger on much longer before little E and Jiz disappeared downstairs together, leaving me to my own sort of royal duties. They walked away giddy as if they were teenagers imposing on young lovers about to embark on a romantic evening. Well, yeah, I'm sure that that's what happened, right? um, Next to the study was the bathroom where I led him to next. The room was dimly lit. Wait, next to the study was the bathroom where I led him to next. The room was dimly lit, masking the light from showing the disparity in my eyes. It was a beige marble tiled floor with porcelain Victorian style bathtub in the middle of the room, and nowhere near the size of Little E's residences. I turned on the taps for the tub, and the heat from the water began to steam up the small room. On the basin were aromatic oils, lotions, and soaps. Loving the scent of floral notes, I poured in the lavender bath oil, trying to do the best of my youthfulness to try to act seductive. I gradually began to strip off my clothing piece by piece, giving him time to savor the moment to come. He loved every second of it as I went over to where he was waiting and watching, then began to undress him at a much quicker pace. We kissed and touched each other before submersing, it says, submersing into the hot water, where we both continued to reenact foreplay. He was adorning my young body, particularly my feet, caressing my toes and licking my arches. That was definitely a first for me, and I couldn't help but laugh. I hoped he didn't expect the same treatment back. Though my recent experiences with Rena, through my recent experiences with Rena, I drew a line with extreme fetishes, especially ones that would involve my tongue and feet in the same sentence. It wasn't hard to get him wound up to the point where he just wanted to have the rest of me. So we dried off from the cold and retired to my bedchambers for the longest 10 minutes of my life. Gross. Disgusting. Moments later, and without any real emotional attachment, he burst in ecstasy, leaving me to my own feelings of dismay. As relieved as I was to see the experience come to pass with him, it was finally sinking in that I would never be anything more than but a muse, still trying to ascertain a surreal dream a young girl once held, but no longer the same girl. I was no longer sure that the dream was even real anymore. In a whirlwind thrown together by wealth, power, and privilege, I was but a grain of sand and felt helpless down the road I was naively being led down. When the real picture was unveiled later in my life, I had nothing but memories filled with sorrow to remember of my teenage years. Little E, Jiz, and I left for the States to conclude our long journey home to the USA. I was so happy when we landed on our soil and called TJ from my cell phone to see if he'd meet me at the airport instead of going back to Little E's. He'd be there within 20 minutes. He was so happy to hear my voice that I was back in town, so ecstatic to be getting away from my life of servitude for the next few days. I was sourly disappointed when I got off the phone. As if he'd been listening to my entire conversation, Little E told me he'd like a massage back at his place, and he could pay me at the same time for my trip with him. With much dismay, I had to call TJ back and cancel the arrangement. I thought I wouldn't see him until later that night, in which one of Little E's staff would drive me home and I would be too exhausted to do anything. Chapter 12. When we got back to Little E's mansion in Palm Beach, he wanted to thank me for showing his friend, the prince, a good time, rewarding my diligence with an extra sum of money and luring me deeper into his goal of keeping me at his side as his personal amusement that he could lend out at any time, further proving his capability of using the vulnerable impressions of a young girl to influence and intimidate his fellow peers of like minds. Little E didn't want to know the grim details of how it all happened on my intimate night with the prince. He just asked simply if I thought I did well in keeping his friend happy. Knowing already that the evaluation of my performance I gave was already discussed between them, I just as simply replied back with a nod of approval, though I did have a laugh with Little E about the prince's weird fixation on my feet, and let's just say that he was quite tickled with Andrew's quirky obsession, having a good old chuckle at my eccentric encounter. I was paid extremely well this time, putting the money earned into nothing but popping pills and alcohol by shouting my so-called friends. I think she meant showing my so-called friends a good time, aiming for the attempt to forget about my experiences abroad. I partied like that to feel young again, my age, and most of all, to self anesthetize my troubles from within. It wasn't like I was waiting for someone to arrive on his white horse and take me away to a magical world. I simply yearned for more out of life than being someone's replaceable amusement. Still a romantic at heart, I would often get lost in my daydreams, imagining a new beginning with a strong man that would show me an enduring love, safety in his arms, and a lifetime friendship. Through the suggestion of true love's existence was only a dream for now, something I could only read about in novelistic fairy tales, but the passing thought from time to time was warmly envisioned, with my innermost desires being locked away in a deep crevice of my heart. I knew my romantic notions would be absurd in Little E's eyes. For some unknown reason to me, he could have allowed himself to give love or receive someone's heart in return. Once he said to me when I asked him if he ever thought he would settle down and find Mrs. Right, and he told me he didn't believe that love with one monogamous partner was possible. But he found that love with many was, as if that's what love is. Gross. I thought at the time it had something to do with having so much money and everyone wanting him for that instead of seeing him as a person, and even felt bad for him. But now I can understand from his recent lessons, unlearned, that it was a simple equation of his twisted perversion to become infatuated with the vulnerable youth off the streets. Spending so much time in the entrapment of Little E's embrace, I was becoming numb to the feelings and aspiration to ever climb above this deep hole I had dug myself into. I knew I wanted to escape from this bizarre form of first class slavery, but I still didn't have the tools necessary to help me get out. How could I have? Everyone that knew me believed I was living this enchanting life, a rags to riches success story that most people dream of. Only I knew the price to be paid for all of this, and I was the only one who could pay for it. Underestimating my true self, I was settled by Little E's side for now, considering him to be someone to look up to, my mentor. Such a complicated battle within myself. It is one I still ache to fully comprehend today. Um, let's see. Let's stick all of these pages together. Wow. Can't believe we're on page 81. Dun, dun, dun. How are you guys doing? How are you doing, Annabees? And it looks like there's a few others. If anybody feels like commenting in the chat. Sorry for the loud gulping noise. That was rude. There we go. Alrighty-o. I think read just these last few pages, and then we'll call it a night. And then tomorrow I will try to read the last 55 pages again, because I already have that. That's where I started, was from 85 to 139. So I'll try to just get to 85. And here we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ready, set, go. Sunny spring days melted away the ice off the frozen streets of New York, and the harsh winter winds began to gently blow away the dead leaves. making the caged trees appear to have some form of life again. I hated the cold winters there. It would only add to my depression being locked indoors. Give me hot Florida days blistering in the sun where I can swelter by a cool pool and sip cocktails with pieces of fruit and little ornamental umbrellas floating around. What a vision of solace. Looking around my extravagantly decorated medieval room, I was reminded of the desolation that I was more than accustomed to, knowing it wouldn't be long before I was summoned again for another ritualistic occurrence in fornicating with my master. Ugh, gross. I hardly bothered to leave my assigned chambers, scarcely being sent home for a moment's break. I just accepted my fate. As I predicted, the intercom buzzed momentarily, and I heard Jiz's voice come over and request to meet them in Little E's study. Not an odd call. I would often meet him there first, so he could tie up some unfinished business before heading to the dungeon, or what was thought to be the massage room. Making my way down the hall, I had an eerie feeling wash over me, as if I had several pairs of eyes on me, watching my every move. A cold chill moved up my spine, and I had to move my thoughts elsewhere. Too easy behind these walls to succumb to my fearsome anxieties. I punched in number one once. I punched in number one once inside the elevator, and it took me down to the floor where little E and his surprise guest were waiting with anticipation behind closed doors. Not another surprise guest. I cracked open the heavy wooden doors, and a familiar face revealed itself. Definitely not expected or pre-warned on my part, but I already knew what he was here for, or at least why I was called down to the study. Prince Andrew had that notorious cheesy grin slapped over his face as he looked me up and down like a shiny new car on display, and he was about to take it for a test drive. Jiz led me to the decadent sofa he was lounging on and twirled me around to give him good a good look over before sitting me down on his lap like a show pony. I knew exactly how they wanted me to be paraded around with the last of my dignity long lost. I had nothing more to lose. It was easy to give them the reaction they desired. All I had to do was pretend to be entertained by their lewd gestures, and when Andrew cupped my breasts with a doll made in his image, oh, this is puppets. Uh, they haven't said it, but that's what this is. I only giggled away. Ghislaine wanted to take a picture of the bizarre scene and even got Johanna, another one of Little E's so-called personal assistants, to come sit on his other knee for a snapshot, giving the impression girls couldn't stay away from Randy Andy. Many crude jokes later, and I was asked to show Andrew to the upstairs massage room. I'm sure he already knew where it was from previous encounters with Little E's quote unquote staff. But I led the way anyway, as if he was now my guest of honor. Entering into the dim room, it took a few minutes for my eyes to adjust to the darkness, but knowing my way around the room was enough to find the shower. I turned on the steam room and began to undress myself. Andrew followed my lead and disrobed, throwing his attire to the floor. I wanted to run and hide, feeling his hands touch me again, but my servitude for little E kept me there. Getting out of his stronghold, I turned my attention to the steam filling up and tried to turn his attention to the marble bench where I suggested he take a seat while I rubbed his feet. By the look in his eyes, I knew he could care less about a foot massage. His real desires were being shown, the arousal his body was forming. He indicated where he wanted me to touch him and how. I fulfilled his seedy requests, but only just. There was no pleasure in this for me. The only thing I derived from this event was to sink further into my slumber of depression. I couldn't remember a time when I felt needed for anything other than my body or amusements thereof. After his massage was thoroughly conducted, I couldn't wait to get back to my room for another shower. Sitting on the floor of the shower under the harsh spray of water, I scrubbed my body where he touched me. Feeling abhorrent and ashamed what I had become, I let the water wash away the grime. As the days progressed into nights and the nights followed a trail of destructive months, my outlook on life had diminished into utter sadness. I had lost my spark and my ability to look like I could handle the abusive state of affairs I had drifted into, sinking deeper into the euphoric state of being on coke and pills. Not only was my mentality dwindling away, but also my looks. I sure as hell didn't feel like a 17-year-old anymore, and now I wasn't looking like one. My eyes had dark circles underneath from not sleeping, and my bones protruded from my skinny waistline and chest. This made little E apprehensive in keeping me around as often, and before I had a moment's notice, I was out of money and looking for a job. When I questioned him what was happening, he told me I wasn't the same girl he had first met some time ago now, and looked like I needed a break from working so much. I'll call you next time I'm in town, was the last thing he said to me. Chapter 13. Going back to an average teenager's life was more of a harder transition than I would have ever thought. Jeffrey stopped paying my expensive rent, and I was forced to get off the rugs and look for a real job to feed and shelter TJ and I. It was much harder than it sounded, but I was craving this in every possible way. Even though a week's wages for working a full-time job as a waitress didn't come close to the money I had made in a couple of hours of working for little E, I was happier than I had been in a long time. I made some friends at my new job and found my duties to be easy and pleasant. I was good at making customers smile and keeping them happy, becoming the waitress that made the most tips for the night, which in turn made my coworkers happy since we'd all split the tips at the end of the week. For the first time in a long time, I had boys my age hitting on me, and not that I was ever taken aback by their attempts, but it reminded me of how it felt to be around a younger crowd. I missed so much of what I couldn't get back, and the more I tasted it, the more I remembered how to smile. The relationship between TJ and I began to falter in a way that was beyond reconciliation. Fights became physical, and I saw sides to him that only pushed me away more. He refused to look for work to help pay bills, and he became utterly frustrated, and not having his usual cocktail of assorted rugs to keep him from feeling anything at all. He didn't like the fact I was growing inside and thinking beyond his elusive world. I had gone through too much to accept another form of abuse and degradation. Making that point very clear to him by kicking him out of my apartment back to live with his parents, I felt liberated like never before. I kept up with my rent and cleaned my act up. Enrolling in a yoga course and keeping my focus on staying fit and healthy became my only source of enjoyment. I was free and living for myself. While out doing the grocery shopping one evening, I couldn't help but stop at the local pet store and fell in love with a furry pooch. She was a Japanese chow chow and a bundle of fur that more resembled a baby brown bear than a dog. That sounds so cute. I took her home with me, and instantly she became my best friend. We went for several walks a day, and she bore the brunt of many tear filled conversations. She was my loyal companion who understood more than anyone had before. All I really need was someone to listen, and funny enough, it was her that filled that role. Um, Not enduring suffering exactly, Annabese. That was like 10 minutes ago, though. Sorry, I didn't notice that the thing had moved. Um, but yeah. Um, Nearly 3 months had gone by, and not a word from little E or Jiz. With TJ out of the picture now, too, all I had to concentrate on was work. My parents and brothers, and of course, my dog, Mary Jane. I was going to family night dinners and bonfires again. My older brother was getting married to an amazing woman in a few weeks, and I got to be a part of their beautiful ceremony. Small details of life's journey that I already missed so much of, and now being able to smile at the simple things in a day out really to blah, blah, blah. Being able to smile at simple things day in, day out really seemed to put real value of life into perspective for me. Everything seemed to be working out for itself, and I was really happy until he came back. TJ thought he'd come over my place one evening while I was sitting at home just watching TV. Excuse me. Obviously mentally distorted from whatever choice of rugs he was smoking that night. He screamed down my apartment complex, going mad and scaring my neighbors. I felt like I had no choice but to let him inside. I tried talking to him as a good friend would. I just wanted him to see what he was doing to himself and what he had become. Part of me still loved him and took pity on watching him spiral downwards. Taking him back into my life was not a decision I made wholeheartedly, but was something I did out of guilt and what I thought was loyalty. He moved his clothes back into my place, which was all he ever owned anyway, and we tried to pick up the broken pieces. TJ being still badly addicted to many rugs, I had to be very careful where I kept my jewelry and expensive items. I decided to rent out a space at a local spot and store my cherished items away, just taking the necessary precautions, I thought. Still not working. I knew how he was scraping by money, and I didn't agree with it. TJ was a known thief. and had been caught several times attempting to steal things, even as stupid as DVDs and PlayStation 2 or Xbox games from a local Blockbuster. He even stole from his parents, his sister, and his brother, and probably would steal a piece of candy from a 5-year-old kid if he knew that it would get him to his next fix. He hated the change in myself, realizing I couldn't be brought back down by his ways, but knowing I still stuck by his side and defended him from anything that would hurt him, wanting to believe that he still wanted to show the bits of human nature left in his empty heart. There was some weird verbiage there. I still stuck by his side and defended him from anything that would hurt him, wanting to believe that he still wanted show the bits of human nature left in his empty heart. Unable to stand by and see me do well for myself, he contemplated a way to try to bring me down. After a busy shift one night, he retaliated with another show of control. I had just finished cleaning up my area and setting out the tables to be ready for the next day when I went to the bar to hang up my apron and put my night's tips in the tip bowl on the counter by the beer tap. On one of his drug induced rampages, he stormed into the restaurant where I was working and started to pick a fight with me. I knew he was off his face when he started accusing me of sleeping with my manager on shift that evening. Having no bias or ground to stand on, in his attempt to make me look bad in front of everyone, I just laughed him off as a drunk idiot who needed to go home and sleep off the night's repercussions. Although I was fuming inside that he embarrassed me, but I still made excuses for him and told my boss I had to leave early to bring him home. The bar was deserted as TJ waited alone for me, slumped in a bar stool and looking worse for wear. I had to go to the back of the restaurant and do some explaining to the manager on duty. I couldn't afford to lose my job over this incident. Surprisingly, he was sympathetic towards my dilemma and even told me I could do a lot better than that schmuck, patting my back and telling me to have a couple of days off. I punched out. Last page, my dear. I'm so glad she got a dog. I know, me too. Me too. I punched out and headed to my car with TJ in tow. For the rest of the night, he was oddly quiet. Where was I? He was oddly quiet and asked to be dropped off at his parents' house. I was more than obliged to do so. I couldn't stand the sight of him alone, let alone want to be around him tonight. Being so revved up, it didn't yet dawn on me that something wasn't right. The next morning, I was woken up by an alerting phone call. I had the manager from the restaurant where I worked on the other end screaming at me and asking where the money is. I sat up in bed, completely awoke now, and asked him back, "What are you talking about? What money?" His tone had calmed a bit, and he could hear the earnesty in my voice and explained his accusations. "The tip jar was empty after you had left last night, and there was over $150 in there. Now it's missing." The answer hit me instantly, and I got a terrible knot in my stomach. TJ, when I left him at the bar, not even thinking about the tip bowl to talk with the manager, he saw an opportunity to fund more drugs and he took it. That's why he didn't even want to come back to my apartment that night. it was all too clear for me now, and I tried to explain to my manager about my boyfriend's sickness and asked him to take the money out of my wages. I have no choice but to let you go and file a police report for the missing money. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How did things turn upside down so quickly? I exclaimed, even though I'm paying you from my pocket for money I didn't even steal, and you've never even had any problems from me before. His apologies were short and icy, nothing that could be done. I slammed down the receiver only to pick it up again to dial TJ's parents' house. And to no surprise, he hadn't slept there last night and was not able to be reached. I felt like I was in a bad dream I couldn't wake up from, and with no money to pay rent, eat, or even survive, I was back to the drawing board. So, yeah, that's where we started. So, Anna Bees, are you still here? Was there anything you wanted to chat about with the current events of the last couple of days? My goodness, that whole thing was today. Today's Saturday. Was it yesterday when the guy passed out, collapsed in the Oval Office, and the president just like he stood up and then he just like stared straight ahead, and like his eyes were like bugging out like a halibut. Like his right eye was kind of looking to the right and his left eye was like totally skewered to the left. That was after he took a nap sitting there at the Resolute desk while they were doing their thing, their press conference about the fat drugs, as they're called. And yeah, the irony of like that whole thing with the Great Gatsby party last week, and then talking about the fat drugs when all these people are having so much trouble just like affording to eat and keep their jobs, and these fat cats are eating too much and trying to be skinny. Sucks to be a fat cat, huh? I saw that and I was trying to ignore it. And little T was trying to ignore it. Yeah. Wow, that was a lot. Yeah, and then with that whole thing at the Oval Office, I thought it was so bizarre how RFK Jr. just like took off running. Like, where did he go? Like, why did he bolt like that? And there was another guy that bolted right behind him. I'm not sure who that guy was. But, all those people tending to the guy that collapsed, I couldn't help but think that, what should we call him? Tenacious D was really pissed off that somebody was like taking the attention off of him. That's what I thought. That's how it felt to me. I need to lose weight, and I've asked my doctors, and they say I can't take the fat drug. I love that you call it the fat drug. Yeah, I don't think it's very safe. Maybe to call 911. That would be a good reason to bolt, but wouldn't he have his cell phone on him? And aren't there like a lot of doctors there at the White House all the time? Because Tenacious D he looks like he's gonna collapse any second. But yeah, to give RFK Jr. the benefit of the doubt, or maybe he just wanted to make room for people that could help the poor guy. I mean, I'm not even joking. It wouldn't surprise me if the man that collapsed was holding his breath because he was standing behind Tenacious D. And apparently being anywhere near him is enough to make most people vomit. Like, allegedly, he's got chronic diarrhea and he doesn't change his diaper. I think we talked about this last night. Like, he wears an adult diaper and it's not freshened up often enough. And he's got other horrible smells too, allegedly. Ugh. Hideous. Hideous, I say. So, yeah, let's wrap up for the night. Yes, I'm sure there is one. Oh, a horrible smell. And yeah, if the guy was like holding his breath because he couldn't breathe and then he passed out from holding his breath. I don't know. But man, what was really weird too, Anna, tell me what you think, was that Tenacious D wasn't wearing his like bronzer. Like, he was like the grossest shade of he looked like he was dead. He looked like the color of a person in the morgue with a toe tag. And I was like, wow, so that's why he wears all that bronzer. What, I don't know what happened. Like, did he forget to put it on? Completely weird. But anyway, let's say goodnight, my darling, my dear. I hope you have a good night's rest. Blotchy skin and those eyes. And then, his left eye, it looks, I don't know if it's like a cataract or what, but it's like, it looks like a robot eye almost. A lot of times, the way the light refracts in it, it looks like there's a big hole in the back of his pupil. And then, like I said, the way his eyes like look in different directions. If he's looking to his left, his eyes look normal because that eye is always kind of looking to the left. I don't know if he has a glass eye or what. I have no idea what's up with his eye. But he's in really rough shape. I mean, a lot of people at 79 are in great shape. My mother passed away when she was 79, but she had 10 years of dialysis. So, kidney failure for 10 years, renal failure. He looks like how she did on her deathbed. To me, he looks like he's on his deathbed. Good night, darling. His left eye looks weird. Yeah. I just can't help but wonder if he's already got some like bionic stuff going on, maybe a bionic eye. I have no idea. Anyway, darling, we will see you tomorrow, hopefully. And yeah, we'll see if we can get on this earlier, maybe like around the noon hour, somewhere between noon and 2. He always looks terrible. He does look very, very rough these days. I mean, he doesn't sleep. That's just nuts. Like, sleeping. Does he drink water? I mean, you never see him drink water. You only see him drink Diet Coke. Anyway, I hope that you are drinking your water, eating your protein, and getting your rest, my dear. And thank you so much for being here. See you tomorrow, hopefully. See you on the next one. Have a great night.